Okay, so we are live. Hopefully, everybody's going to be seeing this picture coming through. It is May 3rd, 2026. And whereas last week we were kind of remote in a cabin and it was very analog, talking books and how to write on paper and do all the kind of notes, this week we're going to actually jump forward and actually work more on the digital side of doing investigation work, or the digital side of making yourself safe, being able to do some OSINT, some web or open source intelligence, and that sort of thing. And we've actually brought in a really good guest that I think you guys are going to really appreciate this week. His name's Amick, and he has graphene. He knows the graphene goat. He's got a great website. He trains private investigators, not just here in Washington State, but all over the United States, on basically doing your job better and doing it safely and doing it effectively using a lot of tools that are emerging still, like AI. So if I've got a question with AI, I mean, literally the first person I'm messaging is Amick. So we're going to go ahead and get him on here. Hopefully he'll come up with sound. Can you hear me there?
Yeah, sound's coming through really good.
Oh, good. Excellent. So he's in his remote little lab out there with that massive dog. It's actually a horse, but I think he's disguised as a dog. That thing is awesome. He has a Tyrannosaurus bone when you go over there. And he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" So it's the best dog in the world. But you never want to attack your house, because literally there's this giant horse with a dinosaur bone in his mouth coming to greet you. So it's like, hey, that's awesome. But real quick, if you want, just kind of give us your background, because you've got this long history with SOF, about 20 years actually. And then, got the beard, got out, and then kind of transitioned over to the PI side, executive protection. And now you're doing both digital investigations, like kind of some of the offensive stuff, but also the defensive, right, with digital security. So just kind of give us an intro for the people at home that don't know you.
Yeah, my background, right out of high school, I joined the Army. I grew up in Northeast, so New Hampshire, Pennsylvania mostly, but joined the Army right at 18. Airborne Ranger contract. So I spent about 4 years and change in 2nd Ranger Battalion here in Washington State, where I'm at now still. And then as soon as I was able to, I did SF selection, so Special Forces, to go be a Green Beret. And so I trained as a SF medic and was stationed here back in Washington again after 2 years at Bragg at First Special Forces Group as a medic, and retired right before all the COVID nonsense started. So the November of 19, I was what I call a free range human at that point. Civilian life, I could start growing this. Like, actually could grow this on deployment a couple of times, but couldn't quite get that long. But so now I can be a full-time hair farmer. But yeah, about the time I got out, I had a lot of medical issues and stuff, but my plan was to go to PA school to continue the medical portion, continue the career in medicine. Even though SF, you're trained as an operator, or a Green Beret, on the different mission set that we have there of unconventional warfare. So a lot of combat arms related stuff, but in addition was that 18 Delta, that medic skill set. So I wanted to continue that because the combat stuff's done, but civilian world wanted to continue that medicine. And with the COVID, it just was not going to happen. So it was not going to jive well. So, but luckily, as it turned out, I got hooked up with the private investigator world here in Western Washington, kind of greater Seattle area, and really just fell in love with it. It was perfect timing because the camaraderie was there, because there was a lot of guys that I brought over that were retiring around the same time that I did, came over and were working with us. And so we got in that private investigator world almost by accident, but it worked out really well because it's just kind of goes hand in hand. So a lot of the security stuff, of course, there's a lot of direct translation from the military and that skill set. And people ask if I was a communications guy or did like cyber stuff in the Army, and I did not at all. I was not that guy. I was the last person on my ODA, my team. I was the last person to get an actual smartphone. So I rocked the old school Nokias as long as possible. I was always kind of interested in tech, but I always had that Midas touch. Everything I touched would just stop working for some reason. So me and the IT guy were always on first name basis. Like, what did you do to the computer? So somehow in the last 7 years, I've been out for about 6 years. So somehow in that time, transitioning to the private investigator world, working in that environment, doing a lot of different types of jobs, not just investigations, but security, executive protection. I really got almost immediately found Michael Bazel's content. So I call him the apex predator of all things privacy and security online. Really good, just fascinating content. So I got all his books, got all his podcasts, listened to them all. So it really fell in love with that stuff. And that's what really lit the fire for me and to get interested in this stuff. So I've been doing a lot of digital security, and really it's just the last 5 years, it's really been me learning and just building that, spending every waking hour just completely nerding out, fascinating with that stuff. And so 4 years ago, started selling the Graphene OS phones that we'll talk a little bit about. Linux computers. My wife I was selling a computer out of nowhere. It was like, I just got a computer and we'll just put Linux on it and I don't know, sell it to some friends. She's like, oh, you're doing computers now? I was like, sure, I guess. So now I do a lot of computers. I do routers, network devices. And so lately in the last year, I've really been starting to finally market it a little bit. My flagship course is the Digital Hygiene and Awareness course, or DHAC. Unfortunately, that hasn't really caught on popularity yet. I don't do social media, so it's been very difficult to get the word out. But hopefully, some of the folks here will like it and benefit from it. There's a huge benefit. A lot of folks like to go take the shooting courses because they're sexy and you get to shoot guns and run around and play with other guys and yell and scream and have fun. And that's great. That's a good skill set to have. But most people don't realize that this is probably more important. We're probably not going to be in a shooting war here. It is, and whatever. But this is the current fight that we find ourselves in, almost no matter what. But regardless of whatever you want to think of the situation we find ourselves in with the big tech, I'm trying to peel people away. So my mission set now is really to get people kind of unplugged from the matrix, if you will, and still using technology, but in a much safer way and in a smarter way where you control. We have a lot more sovereignty, because right now I think most of us realize we don't have control of the devices that we're using, the smartphones and computers and all these services that we use online, not just the social media, but email, VPNs, all that stuff. So I teach people how to use those tools and which ones are safe to use, which one are better to use, which ones to avoid, but all the techniques that are involved in there. So it's very technical. A lot of people just they don't want to deal with it because it's a lot of stuff to think about. It's a fire hose of information, but that's part of my course, is expose you to that stuff. And then with the website, there's a lot of free stuff there for people to absorb at their own pace, because we all are busy and have different amounts of time to learn things. And some people take longer to study things than others. That's fine. So that website is there. So you don't, even without taking the course, you can go on the site for free and look around. All the stuff that I use and recommend revolves mainly around using what's called FOSS, or free and open source software. So as opposed to Microsoft or the smartphone that you have from Apple, for example, those are all using closed source proprietary code that we can't see. So they could be programmed to quite literally do anything and everything. So they can toggle your settings off. I know most of you're going through like an iPhone update and it toggles your iCloud backups back on when you had it disabled, but they can literally control your phone completely. And the same story with Microsoft or Apple computers. We as the users, the endpoint users, don't control those devices anymore. So I teach people Linux, which is another operating system outside of Microsoft or Apple. And then the custom phones that I sell, Graphene OS, is an absolutely wonderful solution. And it's what I use every day. And it's what I train and teach people to use. And I sell them as well, almost at cost. I don't really make money off the hardware. But so lately I've been doing a lot of the network assessment type things to harden people's networks and get them safe and secure at home or like small business. So not like enterprise grade, but talking about people like you and me, or people running small businesses, to help them stay safe online, and just what hardware they need, what software options are out there for them to stay safe. And then, of course, with the private investigator background, I guess it all really ties together. It's a really good fit. A lot of the security, the investigations, my military experience, and then now the digital stuff. There's a lot of overlap in all those things. Physical security and digital security go hand in hand. If you lack digital security these days, your physical security is very much at risk. So yeah, that was kind of a long-winded way of saying my background and kind of the stuff that we're talking about today.
Aaron is the Swiss Army knife of, private investigator with digital in there. So, and if you're setting up the server boards and you get cut, he can provide the first aid for it. So, I mean, it's the complete package right there. It's awesome. So it works out really good. And then the other thing is, with Aaron, he's got a lot of the AI stuff, and this will change like week to week almost. I mean, right when you kind of get this AI thing, now there's something new. There's a new version with different capability and different ways kind of it attacks things. And so one of the neat things that you're a good resource on is like, you're literally I don't know when you sleep, but you're kind of, always on the AI side of it. And you get excited about AI, right? Because every other message is like, oh, hey, look at this. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually something I create. I'm using AI. It started like a couple of years ago when it first kind of started becoming a thing that was available to the people in general. with ChatGPT, whatever version. I think, remember, it was like a big deal when 3.0 came out. Now we're on like 5.5, I think. But to watch that change in the last, from using it like, oh yeah, I use it a couple times, and now I literally use it all day, every day. Now I still go out and do other things. I go out climb and do outdoor stuff, and we've got a place in Idaho, and we've got a lot of other things. But when I'm not doing those things, every other moment is at home using AI to solve problems for business. But a lot of it's just for me to build toys and tools, useful things for, like, lately in the last few months, I've been developing a lot of tools for doing automating a lot of the work that I do with network assessment. So instead of having to manually do Nmap scans from commands from memory or using cheat sheets, I can build a tool using AI, and it's just effectively like a program or a script. When I run it, it does all this stuff for me automatically to detect all the devices that are on the network, look for open ports, do operating system detection, there's whatever the thing, have it do a specific function, and then output that to a browser in HTML format. So it's nice and pretty. It's real easy to read, and other people could use that tool as well. And it's just, there's no limit on the things that you can create and build with it, but it's really good at problem solving for, especially you get into political stuff. There's like huge guardrails on it. It's very highly curated or censored. Right? So there's a lot of guardrails built into these big tech models, but there's offline AI that you can use. There's obliterated models that you can run locally on your own hardware that don't talk to any cloud. There's no internet connection required. So it's all private and local. And I've got versions that are uncensored, so it will answer anything, including how to make TATP high explosive. It will answer you, where the online stuff is not going to do that. But that, just watching the improvement in AI, even from about 2.5-3 months ago, is where really this went from being getting slowly better, to all of a sudden this huge leap forward. And now we have Anthropic is refusing to release Mythos, which is the latest one that comes out. It's escape containment and bragging about it. It's finding vulnerabilities in all the operating systems we have today. It's finding vulnerabilities that were baked in like 15, almost 20 years ago that have not been caught yet.
So we're uploading all the things to protect us from the Y2K bug, and then we're actually installing the next few generations of spyware. Yeah, I remember those.
There's a lot of implications with the AI side, but suffice to say, it's advancing. I think it will, in some cases, it will hit a limit in the sense where, once you've captured all the information and improved on how you can use it to get what you need out of it. I don't, how much better is it going to keep getting? Is it, it's been this not linear, it's been a really parabolic curve in improvement, and especially in just, faster and faster. So as time goes on, it's just happening, and instead of months, now it's happening in weeks, and in some cases days. So one person can't really keep up with all the AI happenings, but there's a lot of stuff that we can use. I did a presentation back, I think you were the December PNAI conference, and just talked about AI for the private investigator. And we're not quite there yet, but there's already some pretty good tools that we can use it for. But as we start able to integrate these things to, like, MCP servers, for example, it's a way to give AI tools to use. So instead of just asking AI and copying and pasting stuff like TLO, for example, if you're pulling a report on someone, before long, you're not going to have to do a manual query and then look through everything. You're just going to have what's effectively like an API key for an automated way to pull that information, but using AI. So the AI will use this MCP protocol or something similar, but it'll automatically fetch results from all kinds of different things. And as far as integrating those into like different workflows to automate just so much of this work. So it's not that, AI is not going to replace the private investigator. There's a lot of human in the loop that still needs to be there for final, checks, validation, make sure the information is correct. But it's just going to be that those that are augmented with AI are going to just, excel leaps and bounds ahead of those that refuse to use it. So, is it going to become Skynet and kill all of us because some humans misuse it? Almost definitely. But if we learn to use it, it's a tool. It's a very advanced tool. It's probably the most powerful tool that we've ever had access to as a species, human beings. But like anything else, it is a tool, so you can use it for good, and you can use it safely, just like a firearm. Those that misuse it, it is a dangerous weapon. So AI is not really much different, other than perhaps maybe just the scope of the implications of how powerful the stuff is. And you can see with like Anthropic refusing to release it. China, they've typically up until now, DeepSeek, Quinn, a lot of these models from China have been completely open source, so you can just go download them, run them locally. And they're actually, it looks like they're starting to put a kibosh on that, so they may actually stop releasing some of those open source models, or at least they're basically, we've got up to the point where it's like, we don't, it's getting much more powerful, much faster. We're going to kind of stop it there and keep it kind of dumbed down. And then the stuff that they have under the hood on their stuff that you pay for, the online stuff will be more advanced, but they'll have full control because they can see everything that you're doing. But as far as like those offline models that you can use, it's interesting to see what direction it's going to go. But at the end of the day, the stuff we have now is powerful enough to really be life-changing and still really, really good.
Absolutely. And then the key is, it's an augment. It's not, doesn't take over, right? Because there's a lot of errors in there, a lot of things that'll land you in jail. Sometimes it's like, hold on a second. And then for the investigators out there, one of the big things about AI is the privacy issue. Like some guys are going to Chat GPT and looking up names, find the criminal record. Well, that's a web page, right? It gets indexed and then somebody else can find it, right? And it sets you up for the legal. But what Aaron's been working on is like offline ones that don't do that, right? So you have control of that, just like your files on the folks here. It's not out in the public. You've got it. You're maintaining those privacy laws as you're doing the research with AI. AI is not going to be the stumbling block that gets you sued or in jail for privacy violation.
Yeah, just even not legal, but even just like a safety or data, like you sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement for whatever work you're doing, or individual you're working for, or company. There's a lot of people that, despite having that type of environment, they're like, oh yeah, let me upload everything to Chat GPT.
Like, no, everybody else has it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or there are rogue employees, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. That data is being collected and it's never going to get deleted. It's going to be on silicon forever. So I don't want my client's data or anyone personal data up there, but a lot of people are dumping really sensitive stuff in there. So there are tools to, that's where the private offline AI really excels, or tools like Proton Lumo that's is not recorded. So there are tools out there, but yeah, it's frustrating to watch people just upload anything and everything to the big tech ones. I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he's talking about with that offline. You set up your API and you could do that. The other one for the people that don't know, so the private investigators, you have a series of databases, like TLO is one he mentioned, IDI core tracers, Scope Now. So there's a lot of databases that you have to sign in for, they clear you and all that sort of thing. You have to maintain informational control, but then you have access to databases on folks, and it goes back to like the old Blockbuster. They were registering at Blockbuster, so they have the Blockbuster database with their names and their addresses where they sign up. Well, that's still in the system, and then that goes into part of their database. So when you're looking up somebody, their old library cards, their old DMV registration, Blockbuster video, Redbox, Redfin, when you sign up for those little things, the old movie, the videos that you used to get every month, you could get 10 videos for free, or Thompson Cigar Company. Yeah, data's oil, right? People trade it all over the place, and then even if they don't trade it, say, okay, you don't buy it, somebody's going to hack into it and it ends up on the dark web. And then those things are sold like, cash. So as much as you try to get your privacy, sometimes that escapes the bottle and it goes out there. So that's what those databases are legally is those in there. But now with AI, it goes over everything, but it's not vetting some of that information. It's just giving it to you. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you can set yourself up for a lot of legal problems because you're like, oh, well, that's AI told me it's right. Here you go. It's like, no, that's not the John Smith you're looking at. That's somebody else. And now you've just publicly said he's a murderer. Hold on, dude. So that's kind of the pitfalls in there. What Aaron kind of puts those guardrails and makes sure. And that's why the human element still has to be part of it, because AI still goes out. And then one last thing on the physical thing, I heard two things. One is, remember, we had to go back in January last year, so over a year ago, we're in Memphis looking at Colossus when they were building Colossus 1. I think they're on 2 and getting ready for 3. And it's just massive power suck on that thing, right? And so one of the engineers is like, the decentralized, because DeepSeek had just come out and it was benchmark was like, oh, look, it's the new decentralized. He said, yeah, but you're always going to need a kill switch, a physical kill switch. Like the power lines going in can never be, that was the model. The power lines going in cannot be controlled by AI. There has to physically be the old freaking, lever that just shuts the whole thing down. Yeah. And it sucks power. So if it doesn't have power, it's gone. It overheats and blurts out. There's some backup power they said in there. And then there's generators. They had those giant generators outside with the heat shimmer off it like crazy, but that'll run out, right? So in other words, the ability to have a kill switch on it, if it starts going crazy, They said that's like the biggest thing. And so decentralized is scary if it's the node, like a decentralized node consciousness, like a hive mind.
Yeah.
You can't physically cut it off. And so they wanted this centralized. So Stargate, which is Sam Altman and Larry Ellison, and then Colossus, which was Elon Musk. They're going for that. And now there's a Canadian guy that's, 48 square miles in Utah. He wants a 48 square miles in Utah for a server farm for literally just AI. So the limitation, apparently, according to them, is the coolant, the energy. The energy is the big one. The physical space.
Powering is the major hurdle.
Yeah, that energy coming in.
We're working on micronuclear. Actually, one of the things I do is penetration testing and red teaming.
I thought you did micronuclear. I'm like, what don't you do? Jesus.
Micronuclear is like one of the facilities we got to go and attempt to break into, but those are small and very safe. We think of like nuclear facility, we think of Chernobyl, and that's not the case. These are much safer, and they don't require a ton of cooling like the old legacy nuclear plants they're using. Basically, I think it's fission, fusion. I don't know what the exact right terminology, but essentially they're taking nuclear waste that's only got like 5 to 8% left, so it's considered waste. But even that 5% left is a crap ton of energy that's still able to be captured in this micronuclear, and they're the size of like a regular size industrial building, so not like a square block, basically, maybe a couple of square blocks. It's a relatively small footprint, but a lot of power, because solar is just not going to get it done, and wind is definitely not going to get it done. You don't have the base load continuous power. With those tools, you would need a ton of battery that we just don't have right now. But yeah, power is definitely the biggest hurdle. And that's the same when you're doing your offline AI. Power is less of a hurdle. You're still going to, it requires power. But the big expense, the challenge for doing your own offline AI, yes, you can run some models on a laptop, for example, like DeepSeek R1. You can download the 8 billion or the 14 billion parameter. It's a real small size version of DeepSeek, and you can run that locally on your laptop. So not a ton of power, but it's not very good. In order to run stuff that is anything remotely close to what you're running when you fire up ChatGPT or jump on Anthropic like Claude, for example, you're using models that are like pushing a trillion parameter, about a trillion parameter. So really, really big. You would need about $100,000 or more in hardware, so GPU, and that's the problem now, is finding RAM for the computer and memory. Even hard disk storage, NVMe drives, any type of storage drive is like tripled in price, because they're all going to the AI data centers, and a lot of them haven't even been built yet, and there's no power for those yet. So it's been challenging to build offline AI, because it is expensive. So that's the limitation for us. But yeah,
perfect. All right, now take us forward. So that's kind of the background of it. So now practical. So people at home that are looking at this going, okay, how do I, for example, a lot of people are going, oh, that website's a honeypot, even if the guys are opening, oh, this is that. Okay, well, in other words, when you're looking at things, what do you do? What are some of the processes you do to do that defensive screening? And then after that, kind of take us into your DHack system. What can they expect if they sign up for that DHack, and kind of go over that if you don't mind?
Yeah, and share screen in a second here, but there's a couple of tools that one of the big ones I use is called Chasm Workspaces, KASM. I'll show you what that looks like in a second, but a lot of folks, if you have not used AI, the beauty of it is if you don't know about something, you can just ask AI. It sounds flippant, and we can be flippant about it, but it is true. It's kind of like the new Google it, just Google it. Why are you asking me? Just Google it. But there's a lot of truth in that. Folks will tell people about a project I'm working on, like, oh, I built this huge Python script that's like thousands of lines of code, and it does X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, yeah, I don't know how to do that. And I go, well, I don't either. I just asked AI, and it made it for me, and refined it and everything. So don't be afraid to just jump in and ask it what you think is dumb questions, because not only will it answer whatever immediate question probably pretty good, it'll inform you about things that you might not have even thought of or weren't even aware of, to go look and research. Say, for example, you're like, how do I determine if a website is safe? You can literally plug that into an AI search engine and start asking it for ideas on what you can do. Some of the obvious ones, of course, well, maybe not obvious, but just looking at how long the domain's been around. So you can look up like who is data. So you can literally just type in who is space and then the website that that's in question. And you can see, hey, is this a newly registered domain? Because anything that's, registered like within the last 30 days is already highly suspicious. That's something that someone might have spun up to, do something nefarious with. But there's a lot of nefarious stuff that also has been around for longer than that. So there's really not a lot that's like, a perfect yes or no. This is malicious based on just one attribute. So looking at a number of different things. But at the end of the day, too, the chasm just provides us a good way to cheat. If you have a website you just want to explore and check out, and you're not sure if it's a safe site to visit, even with VPN and all the other hardening tactics that we do that I teach in the DHAC training, you still touch a malicious site. It has the ability to do nasty things to you. So especially if you have a computer that has other files on it, sensitive data, you don't want to expose that to unknown sketchy websites. So just isolating. So there's like virtual machines are a great tool that I use for almost all investigations, but let's show you what this Chasm workspaces. Let me go ahead and share a screen with you guys and just give you a taste of what it is. So this is, again, Chasm workspaces, and let me know if that comes through on your end. There we go.
There you
go. So this is the admin. So you can create unlimited users on this thing, which is really nice. So this is the back end of the admin panel. So if you want to look, for example, if you go to the workspaces, as when you sign in as a user, this is something, by the way, we say, what is this? This you can actually build on your computer in a virtual machine, so you can run it completely locally on your own actual device. But the best way to run this is a couple of ways. One, pay for VPS, so a virtual private server in the cloud. Usually you can get them as little as like $7 to $10 a month. You can basically just rent cloud compute space somewhere. It's just a Linux server somewhere in the cloud. So I have a couple instances of that, but you can host this locally on your own hardware. So you can spin this up relatively quickly using something like Docker. Again, you can ask AI how to build it. I don't know how to do it from memory. I just plug it into AI and say, hey, I'm trying to build a Chasm workspace container. Show me how to install it, and it'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to build what you're looking at right here. But this tool gives you, and running this on your local hardware. So I have, like this one, for example, is running on a small like a Dell desktop computer that's just sitting in my house. And so I've got it piped out to my own custom domain, as you can see there. So chasm.graphinggoat.net is what I've got it accessible by. So it's just a username and login to access this. So pretty easy to get logged in. And then you can see it has all these things. So all these different browsers. For example, I have Brave installed on my computer, but some of these others, like Google Chrome, is extremely invasive. They hoover up everything about what you're doing, not just the sites you're visiting, but all kinds of attributes about your computer, and doing a lot of fingerprinting, which is basically looking at all the attributes about you, the user, or more specifically your device as well. And of course, most people are signed in to their Google account. So it's logging and tracking all the things. So I don't want to install that on my computer, but there's cases where, especially if you're a developer, or there might be just some websites that you need a Chrome browser that, Firefox won't work, or Brave's not quite working right. Now you have access to this, so I can just launch. We can go into a new tab. You can hit launch, and it's a tiny little bit of lag, but not too bad. Now I have this Chrome browser instance. It's in a container, so this whole thing is completely containerized. So it's like an ephemeral experience. Every time you spin up one of these containers here, and you can spin up multiple, so you could open 10 of these if you wanted to, as long as your computer has enough resources like RAM and CPU. But generally I run like a couple at a time. You've got Edge, Firefox, you've got whole operating system. So this, Debian is a Linux distribution. So when you launch this is an entire computer, a virtual computer, but it's an entire computer that you can spin up from like just a low powered laptop, because you're using the resources of the Chasm host machine. So in my case, again, this is like a mid-grade Dell desktop that's dedicated for this task. So it's got a pretty good amount of horsepower. So if you have a really, old, 8 gigs of RAM, really old, low spec laptop, you're just interfacing with it on that, but the actual power is being done on whatever server you select. So you can really kind of amplify what you can do on a really low powered computer with a tool like this. So it can launch a whole operating system. But so if you have that sketchy website, the beauty of this, if you type in whatever sketchy website, you can visit it.
Share that tab, because you're stuck on that first tab. You have to share that second tab.
There we go. Let's see.
Perfect.
Works good. Okay, we're back. But so you go into this, you type in your URL that you want to visit, and then you can just explore what that does. You can see what is it doing, and you can open up. There's when you're done with this tool, so you can pause it any time. So let's go ahead and stop it. When you're done researching that, stop it now. Then you can just click delete. Once you do that, there's nothing, even forensically, like if the FBI snatched this computer there's really nothing on there for them to look at. So it's a great thing from a privacy standpoint, but it's also excellent for security. This tool was built for investigators as well as developers and programmer testers, testing different software, etc. But this is a really fabulous tool for looking at anything that you're just not quite sure of. Just launch it with one of these browser of choice, or you can even launch an entire operating system. If you wanted to do deeper analysis, that's where you would use something like your Debian, your Kali Linux. There's Ubuntu. There's a few other flavors of Linux. You can launch an entire computer, and then you could install different tools on there to do further investigation. If you're tech savvy, there's a lot more things you can do with the operating system than just a tab. But for the average user, just launch one of these ephemeral tabs. Once you close it, it's gone. So even if it was some of the worst malware on planet Earth, it can't escape this Chasm container. And then once you close it, it's gone. That your computer's not infected, the server's not infected. It's just this completely ephemeral experience you have here. So it's all just containers. And again, on the back end, if you want to take, for example, some of the other, if you go to, I think it's under, let's go, where is it? I think it's under workspaces. Go to the registry, for example, and this just shows all the other, there's more than this, but you can do custom ones you can build yourself. But these
it's
are all
still on that one screen. It's still on the
oh, here, let me go back.
Chrome. There we go.
There we go. So let's go to this workspaces tab. We're back in the admin panel again. So go to workspaces and find the registry. And this gives you all of the different tools that you can deploy on your own instance to use. So you can see there's entire operating systems. There's even games and stuff. There's Signal desktop. So there's more than this, but just an example. But back to the workspaces, that's one of my favorite tools. Another one is just simply on your computer, or you can do it in Chasm as well. But one of the tricks that I did, I was just doing this today actually, using the F12 button when you're on a website, you're in your browser. Just click F12 and it opens up the developer console. So you see a bunch of technical, nerdy looking stuff. And it's got different tabs. So like network, console, performance, all different tabs. So what I did, I had a website where I was building for a friend of mine, and the checkout process was real glitchy. So it wasn't working right. Like when you try to scroll, it was like jittering and just not behaving well. And I couldn't tell it was a WordPress site, and I couldn't really see anything obvious on the back end. And so I just took screenshots of that technical data using the F12, and then just take a screenshot. You can feed that directly into AI. So for example, let's go, let me share screen. I'll show you just a quick example. Share this tab. Can you see this okay?
Yep, there we go. Claude Opus.
Yeah, so this is the one that I use the most. So this is called Open Web UI. This one happens to be online AI. So everything I feed in here does go to the cloud, but I purchased this anonymously with privacy.com virtual cards and fake name, alias email. But depending on what you put in it, you could dox yourself. So it's not, I wouldn't consider 100% private at all, because again, all the data you put in here is going to the cloud. But I do have other instances of this where it looks identical. It's the exact same web interface, but it's running that local AI we were talking about that's completely offline. So you can access this on your home network. You can access it via the internet. So it's online in the sense where you can access it, but it's offline in the sense that the AI queries that you're putting in and the prompts and the information that you're getting back, those are not going anywhere. They stay on your local machine. As a matter of fact, they don't even get saved. They're automatically deleted unless you install this front end. And you can see here, it'll save all your different chats and stuff that you're working on, so you can go back and forth and keep working on different projects. But you can just upload a file like this, and then you just take whatever screenshots you had of the F12 of the website in question. You can ask it like, hey, I'm trying to determine if this website is safe or could it possibly be malicious. Help me analyze this. You can just talk to it in plain English, upload a number of screenshots, and it'll actually, for me today, example, I just used this today, share some screenshots because of that website being real glitchy during the checkout. I fed it 3 screenshots of the F12 view of the web page as I was doing the actual checkout where it was throwing an error. And it pointed out exactly immediately in one prompt. It's like, oh, this is what's causing it. So it's really good at being able to tell exactly what's going on. But at the end of the day, for me, Chasm is still my favorite tool because that just gives you a completely safe sandbox environment that nothing can escape. So I'll click on malware. If you get like a phishing email, for example, you want to see what it does and try to attribute who or what it was, or at least find out what it was programmed to do. You can carefully right click, save that link, open it in Chasm, and just see what happens. See, is it reaching out to some command and control server, or is it taking control? Is there someone moving your mouse? What is it actually programmed to do? That Chasm is still one of my favorite tools for a lot of reasons. Investigators, for doing OSINT, I will do at least a virtual machine, which is just kind of another way. It's like a computer on your computer that's separate. So it's basically a software version of a whole separate computer that you can use on your laptop, for example. But Chasm is just a little slightly different version of that, where you can spin up all those different containers, do your research. When you're done, you can close it out and everything's gone. So those are my favorite tools. Again, you can ask AI depending on what type of site you're looking at. And I block a lot of stuff too. So part of when I do the training for DHack, we prevent most of the stuff more so from a safety standpoint, as opposed to like analyzing is this site specifically safe, but just blocking unwanted traffic. So, for example, I don't see ads anywhere. Like podcasts, I have to fast forward through. But when I'm browsing online on my computer, I don't see any ads at all. One, I use Brave browser a lot, which blocks a lot. But using tools like DNS filtering, so NextDNS, Quad9, something like that, ad blocker or ad guard type tools. You can actually block known malware is already baked into it. So you can say it already has examples of known malicious links and websites. So it'll automatically block those for you. So I run that. And that way, if you do click on that phishing link, unless it's something brand new, it's not going to work because your DNS will just block it. So there's a lot of tools like that as well, just to keep you safe. So if you do accidentally click on something you shouldn't, the chances of it being successful are pretty low. And then even just switching your operating system is another. Switching to Linux, most malware is targeted at Windows because it's the most prolific, most common operating system in use today. It's like 80%, probably more than that. Like most people are running Windows, probably both at personal as well as at work. So most malware is targeting that operating system, and it is definitely the worst out of the three big ones. So Mac OS, much more stable. It's actually Linux and free and BSD under the hood. Darwin OS specifically, but it's basically open source Linux, but then they built, just like with the phones, it start with the open source kernel of the software, and then they add on all this proprietary code and lock the whole thing down. So using Linux, you're just using that open source kernel and libraries of an operating system that you fully control. And so there's definitely malware for Linux. So don't think like, oh, if I use Linux, I'll never get a virus. But the chances of you getting malware on a Linux computer, most of the Linux viruses are targeted at servers. Because if you click on a website, if you go to graphinggoat.com, or if you go to any website, YouTube, doesn't matter, something like 95, 98% of web servers are running Linux, probably Ubuntu or Debian, for example. So there's, most of the malware for the Linux environment is targeting those servers, not endpoint user devices. But Linux, just again, the operating system itself can keep you very, very safe, as opposed to a normal Windows machine that's typically very vulnerable. They have Patch Tuesdays, so once a month they release sometimes emergency stuff. But now with AI, again with Anthropic's Mythos, it's able to find stuff that is vulnerable that humans have not found because it's just so powerful at looking at its. Windows is something like 45, 47 million lines of code totally. Linux is about 20 to 25 million lines of code. That's still a lot of code to look through for bugs and security vulnerabilities. AI now, the newer stuff, can find those in a matter of like a day or two. It can analyze all that stuff and find holes. So using something like Linux is much better, I think, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, just to keep you safer. There's a lot of different levels there. Operating system, specific tools like Chasm, and then it's using like F12 and feeding those screenshots or copying and pasting data directly into AI will help you analyze, hey, is this website safe or not? And there's stuff like that for applications too. So when we talk about phones, there's an Exodus privacy website that I've got linked on my site. So if you're not sure if an application is safe, because there's a lot of apps out there that you don't want on your phone, there's outright malicious malware posing as legitimate applications all the time. And sometimes they even slip through and make it into Apple and Google Play stores. So that is definitely a thing as well. But
Yeah.
some of them are just
LinkedIn,
undesirable. Yeah, you get like download
LinkedIn being
Facebook
the biggest.
to your phone. Yeah, LinkedIn's really that's the one I can't even create burner accounts anymore. They know everybody on earth pretty much.
It's nuts.
You try to
There's a
create
question
fake.
from one of the. I can't. Unfortunately, the Substack won't let me do questions on StreamYard to boot it up, so I have to look in the phone. Ghetto Fabulous here, but BCG says, wasn't there just a CVE issued for Linux?
Yes, there was. I just went through and patched all my servers and my machines. So it was a copy fail vulnerability was the name of it. So it allowed essentially if someone gained access as a user, they were able to elevate to root, which is admin. So that was a huge vulnerability that was discovered in the modern Linux kernel, which is kind of the core of the operating system, with the rest of it being the library, GNU libraries. But colloquially, we call it Linux. But yeah, there's vulnerabilities found all the time in all of them. You know, it doesn't matter if it's iPhone, doesn't matter if it's Mac OS, Windows, Linux, Android. There's always security bugs. That's why you want those updates. I know people groan because they're like, it's going to manipulate all my settings and change. Stuff's going to change how it looks, and the button's going to be on the top left instead of the top right now. Those are just kind of some growing pains that you should deal with. Just because there's a reason why there was an update. Sometimes it's just benign bug fixes, but there's also a lot of security vulnerabilities that are discovered and then subsequently patched. So you want those patches for sure. So yeah, I went through. Matter of fact, like last 2 days, I went in and just updated and patched all my systems. Still, what are the chances of someone getting onto your device as a user? Still pretty low. So it's not a huge threat in that sense, but yeah, you don't want something elevating to root permissions without your permission. So yeah, keep the stuff up to date for sure.
Makes sense. And then the other thing you do is kind of a side hustle. That was your primary hustle for a while. Is you have these de-Googled phones, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, you kind of remove all that spyware, bloatware, and things like that. Can you explain that to some of the folks out there?
Yeah. So the holding here is actually, ironically, it's a de-Googled phone on a Google phone. So it's kind of extra funny that we're doing it on Google. But what it is, we have kind of going back a little bit, we have of the 5 operating systems, we have 2 main mobile systems. You already know what they are, iOS and Android. But there isn't a third option. It's another type of Android. So Android itself, when we say Android, what we're really talking about is Google's version of Android. So again, we have an open source Android project, AOSP, at the core, which is maintained by Google still, but that core code is open source for anybody to use to build their own version of Android. And that's what Graphene OS has done. So if you go grapheneos.org, you can see all the details about it. But the shortness of it is it's dubbed as this like secret squirrel, James Bond, privacy phone. And it is, and it isn't. It is. Yes, it has it's the most hardened cell phone you can get. You say, it must be expensive. It's actually completely free. Yes, you have to buy the hardware, but the operating system is completely free and open source. So anybody can audit the source code. You can put the source code into AI and have it analyzed to verify that it is safe. But it's very, very security oriented as the first and foremost mission. So still very user friendly. You can install any application you want on it, just like a regular Android phone. But by default, it only has like 13 apps on it. So your normal Android phone has like 200 applications baked into it. You can't even remove most of them. They're baked into the actual operating system. And we call it bloatware because it's just stuff that we don't want, we don't use. There's a lot of tracking telemetry. So one of the big things you'll find when you migrate over to something like Graphene OS is your battery life is like over double in most cases, just because it's not sending all this telemetry to all these different players, not just Google or Apple, but you install Facebook on your phone. Even if you don't have it on your phone, there's still a lot of stuff that reports to Facebook, like your contacts, your location is constantly being monitored all the time by the cell carrier, and that's shared with different applications. There's a lot of stuff, and of course I go into depth and I get a lot of like, oh my God, they're really doing all this stuff to our phones. The things that they can infer about us from the phones is actually kind of staggering. How old you are, like how physically capable you are, how much physical activity you do, whether you're intoxicated or not. They can tell if you're male or female. They can tell, like old versus young, tall versus short, all these different attributes about us. And that
we had a guy, they were reading back his tracking, and it was like, yeah, he got in a car here. And like, how the hell do you know? Like, the pressure when it closes the door, that's the barometric pressure on the phone. I'm like,
activity
this was what, 8
recognition.
years ago. They were telling me that.
It's not just like, oh, he's driving in a car versus walking. This is like, hey, he's walking versus walking quickly versus running. He's riding a mountain bike versus riding a scooter, two very similar things. So because of the speed and the way that the phone is moving, it knows what type of thing you're, with your horseback riding versus, if you're skiing versus snowboarding, it has really powerful activity recognition baked into it. So with Graphene OS, it defeats everything except for the location tracking, but it makes it much less granular. So, for example, there's 4 ways that the phone knows its location, but the main one, of course, is GPS. The other is the cell phone triangulation or trilateration, technically, where you have your phone is connecting to 3, 4, 5 different towers, looking for that strongest signal to latch onto. So it'll use that one, but it's still pinging off these other towers. And those radios are directional, and it gives the signal strength decibels. So it's at this exact azimuth, negative 54 decibels. Then we can infer that it's probably about X distance, right? So you have multiple of those. You can triangulate a pretty approximate. Now, sometimes they're very inaccurate. They might say, well, you're in like the eastern side of DC, versus sometimes, depending on the density of towers and what else is going on. But some cases it can pinpoint you down to like a pretty small area, usually not like, hey, you're at this specific house, but the GPS absolutely is able to do that. Your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth radios are also directional with signal strength. So when the UPS driver comes over to drop off a package at your house, for example, he gets within range of your Wi-Fi router, your access point. And so Google and Apple, they record that, again, direction, and the signal strength to figure out the distance. It already knows its location because it's doing its own location. So that way, without anyone even knowing it, now those phones are collecting every single access point name and location. And so there's actually a crowdsourced one called wiggle.net where you can actually go and you can contribute to it, called War Driving. But so you can actually go out and collect that stuff and upload it. But there is a crowdsourced one that's pretty good. But Google and Apple have one that's definitely better because they're just collecting all the data all the time. So we just shut all that off with Graphene OS, except for that some of that location data from the cell tower pings is not as accurate as GPS, but it does show approximate location and where you're moving day to day if you put a SIM card in the phone. But if you run it without a SIM and you only use Wi-Fi, like off a hotspot from another device, then you can now also defeat the location tracking. But all the other stuff, if you install Facebook on it, you absolutely can. Then now you're subjecting more data collection from that application, but the operating system itself is not reporting all this telemetry about your usage. There's no other person. So with Google, Apple, Microsoft, those companies control the operating system. So there's actually another party. In this case, the only thing that this reports to, it looks at the Graphene OS servers. It just looks for updates, and then it syncs the time. That's it. There's no telemetry. Nothing goes to Graphene OS, and we can verify it because of the source code is open. We can audit this to verify that it's not doing those things. With the closed source stuff, we don't know what it's doing. Well, we do know that it's collecting a lot of stuff, but we don't know, the extent of what's happening. So this tool shuts off all that stuff, and it just makes you significantly safer. Another example, like QR codes, absolutely hate them because they're not human readable, but your phone can read it. So most phones, and it's getting better, but some other phones will do this as well now. But when you scan a QR code, it just automatically goes to that website. We have no idea what site that's going to be. Again, back to site safety. I want a chance to audit that website before I visit it. Graphene OS, when you scan, it actually gets a little pop-up on your screen that says, hey, this is the link, and you can copy the link. Do you wish to proceed? Yes or no? Or just copy the link, put it into Chasm, open it up, see what happens. So you can do some more investigation on that link before you just visit the site. So there's pretty much every security feature you could think of is baked into this operating system.
Nice. Yeah, I like the scan code too for the what was it, Spain? Was it Spain or Portugal? The protesters went out because the police are scanning everything. Or there was an opposition group that were at each other's throats. It was like the Basque Freedom Party. So it must have been Spain. And then another party. So what they did was they had those little codes in their shirts, and it went to like the most ridiculous porn site, right? Yeah. So everybody was doing it like, oh wait, because it just automatically pulled it up. And when it was on their shirts instead of like really bad sites, they're like, oh no.
So I've seen one for like the robot dogs from like Boston Dynamics and something like stuff like that, like robot drones and stuff. where you just like put QR codes on your, just like you were saying there, but have it go to a website that's loaded with malware to infect it and shut it down. Like that'd be pretty funny.
Well, that's one level up. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I was just
we can fight back,
that was awesome.
These nasty tricks. Flock
So
cameras are all getting taken down here in
Oh.
Washington State. In
I got a video real quick. While you got that's a good chance to show this real quick. So one of the people had a question like 3 or 4 weeks ago about the cameras, because there's contracts for the traffic cameras, and now they've got McDonald's that reads the VIN number, and then it links that to your code and all that. But they have
in fact, my sister-in-law, up until about a week or two ago, she spent her whole like 25-30 year career working for McDonald's, and she just outright told me, she's like, McDonald's, we think of it as a restaurant, and she's like, yeah, we sell food, but that's like just a kind of a front. We are a data company. We collect your data. So every time you go through the drive-through, it's reading your license plate. It's scanning your phone. Yeah, it's looking up
your VIN, your credit card, and then how many people in there. Yep. Oh yeah.
Everything you ordered. Serving is it's just to serve you ads. And like, well, okay, maybe that's what it's used for right now, but then it's getting sold. Like Amazon Alexa, for example, that data gets sold to about 50 different companies that in turn, sell it to other companies, not just U.S. companies either, by the way. We're talking all over the world. So that's the stuff that's like, you have an open microphone in your house that's getting, that data is potentially being sold to who knows where or how far. So we should not be okay with that. The whole like privacy, like, I got nothing to hide. We don't actually believe that. Just like that's a reason why you put locks on your doors. There's a reason why, even though I trust that, I trust my family, but I still want to close the door when I go to the bathroom. That's my own private time, to do what I need to do. So we don't believe, we put passwords on our email accounts because we don't want other people reading our stuff. Are we trying to, hide? So privacy is all about consent. It's not about hiding stuff. It's about consent. I consent to giving X data to whatever audience. Right. So these allow you, even though these are dubbed like a secret squirrel privacy phone, this is really just what a phone should be, where you, the user, actually control the operating system. And so that's the big clutch. So the most fundamental thing that you can do from a security standpoint and in the digital world is to change the operating system on both your phone and your computer. So Graphene OS on mobile, again, it's completely free to flash yourself. There are some nuances as far as like which type of phone. So it's not all pixels. It's only fully unlocked Pixel devices. So if you got one from Verizon, a year ago, one, it's carrier locked to Verizon, so you can only use Verizon SIM cards. Two, the bootloader's locked, so you can't actually get into it to flash it. So you need to get a fully unlocked. And that's the hardest part of doing the phones, is just sourcing the correct version, the OEM version of the hardware. But once you get it flashed, again, it's completely free to download and flash yourself. So,
and all this is on your course, right? So you go over all that, hey, this step A, step B, step C, and then the other thing that I look at it from transactional as well. So there's the consent, but there's we kind of investigate all of the nodes and the networks about where the information goes, right? Follow the bees and where they're taking all of your pollen, which is your data. Yeah. And the biggest thing we found was that there's a tremendous amount of money in just knowing what I do every day. In other words, my actions make money for somebody else. I don't benefit from that. Nobody pays me for all of the money that they make on my activities every day. That's slavery in a way, right? Digital slavery, right? There's people making lots of money off that. I'm not seeing any of that. So if you take away that ability for people to make money and profit from you, some of them are very nefarious in other countries, right? Yeah. In other words, that's a good thing.
Yeah, you shut it down completely. So the reason why they collect all this data, it's not just for fun. They're able to make money off of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So if we just, get the masses to stop using Google, Apple, Microsoft and migrate over to something better. And we're seeing more of that with Windows nonsense, what they're doing with Windows 11. I mean, Windows previous was really bad too. I mean, they got caught recording, like logging your keystrokes like 18, almost 20 years ago. So just imagine what they're doing now. But I refuse to play in that environment. The few times where I do have to interact with Windows and Apple devices pretty frequently, just for doing digital hardening. For the folks that don't want to switch to this stuff, I can still, harden the network and just get them fresh, reset, clean devices and stuff. So I am seeing some of the, even though I don't use them myself, I still keep fairly up to date on the happenings of some of the base operating systems. But they're just, every time I get on one, it just bothers you. It's spamming you, delivering ads. There's ads in the settings menu when you're looking through the settings. It's like ads popping up and embedded in there. With Linux, it just leaves you alone. There's no ads. There's no extra pop-ups. There's no junk. Yeah, after being on Linux for a while, you'll go back, once in a while to a Windows machine to do something, or for work maybe, and it's just really bothersome. It's really obnoxious. And the good thing is, like, nowadays, 10, 15 years ago, you could say Linux was kind of this weird nerdy thing. You had to kind of be a nerd to know how to use it, because it was kind of complicated, and you had the terminal, you had to type, complex code and commands, and you don't have to do that anymore. In the last, 5-10 years, it's really improved a lot, where it's actually the easiest operating system to install on a computer. Installing Windows takes like an hour, because you have to go through all these onboarding and sign into your account and everything. With Linux, you can install it in as little as about 5 to 8 minutes. Some of the distributions a little bit longer, but you can install it really, really easily, very quickly. And, even like the folder structure is the same. Most of the stuff we're doing these days is not through an app, it's through the browser. So using a browser on Linux is 100% identical to using it in these other systems. The apps you do need, the app installation is a little different, but still not hard. But the overall user interface is very, very easy. Really not that long to get used to. So it's any encouragement. Everyone that takes the training that does, a lot of people don't switch full time because they have to use some of these others for work. But the folks that do end up switching over to Linux, every single one of them has said, "Wow, it was actually easier than I thought." I thought it was going to be much more difficult than it actually was. So,
and there's different flavors for different personality types. Like if you're really hung up on Windows, you get Linux Mint, right? It's like, okay,
exactly.
Well, there's whatever you're comfortable with, and then you can kind of wean yourself more and more, away from that. So go take us through this course. So you've got Graphene Goat, so you get a little bit of the phone thing. Kind of walk through what people can expect in your course there, and kind of what you go over, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the course is very, very dynamic as far as there's a tiny bit of PowerPoint depending on the class. And that's more so just to make sure that I don't miss anything or go too far off topic. The course it's a very free flow in a way. Like I do have a approximate order. There are some things that I do go in a very specific order, like password managers, two-factor authentication, setting up anonymous email, setting up anonymous payment options. Those are the tools that we need for the other portions of the course. But most of it, I kind of go phone heavy. So most courses I'll do in 2 days. If I can, and people have the time, 3 days is much better. It allows for a little bit more hands-on, but otherwise it's me just hammering away as much content as I can. So it's probably about 2 weeks worth of training crammed into 2 days. It really is a lot. So it's very, very, very dense. So bring lots of coffee. You'll need to be highly caffeinated to absorb this. So I'm going to basically assault your brain with as much as I can possibly share in those 2 or 3 days. And it's all classroom environment, so you don't really need to bring anything. You don't need to really take a whole lot of notes, because all the stuff that I talk about, I've got it loaded up on the website as kind of that complimentary back end. So you're going to retain maybe 5% of what I teach in that 2 or 3 days of fire hose going on. So the website is there to backfill and go, oh, he was talking about fill in the blank, home firewalls. I don't remember what was the one that he recommended, or what was the name of that. You go to the section on the site, home firewalls with pfSense. Oh, that's the name of it. There's links to everything. There's links on how to install it, links on where to buy it, how to configure it, etc. And then if you want to learn more, here's some more links. So there's a lot of resources on the site for free after the course is done. But there's a lot with the digital privacy and security. There is those two main things, privacy and security. There is a lot of overlap in those things, because the things that achieve us, privacy or security, often are the same thing. We want security to keep people out so we can maintain our privacy, but they are two different things. So I probably more folks interested, and kind of my focus. The course is designed very much as, first and foremost, a digital security course to keep you safe online. And if you wish to take it to the next step and also stay private, because you can be very secure on Apple. You can be very secure even on Windows. That's debatable, I guess, but you can be pretty secure on just about anything. But do you also want the privacy of keeping Google and Apple and Microsoft? Do you want privacy from them as well? And honestly, Linux just offers better security out of the box anyway. So you will be even more secure by default. But the course walks you through both of those things, privacy and security. The main thing, again, the fundamental thing is changing your operating system. So switching to Graphene OS and switching to Linux for your desktop or laptop need. And you can flash Linux to almost any laptop. Some of the Mac machines, especially the ARM-based chip. So if you have, the Mac has a couple different main chips. They've got some of the newer ones. They won't flash to Linux, but most of the ones pre 2022, especially the ones that have the Intel chip, those you can put any flavor Linux on them that you want. But a regular PC that you have Windows on, you can install any Windows or any Linux on that Windows machine that you want in about 20 minutes. So it's very, very easy. But that's and a lot of so the operating system is the fundamental, but the course goes through a lot of tools, really quick, easy things that people can kind of latch onto. I got the quick start guide up on the resources and links page of the site that is just a really short, like, hey, here's the most important, like, top 10 things to focus in on first. Getting an alias, getting an encrypted private email up and running, encrypted private messenger for chat, video, voice calls, etc. Tools like Signal, SimpleX, what Tor browser is, which browsers to use, which VPNs you should be using or not using, the different anonymous payment options like privacy.com. We're using prepaid debit cards. I do touch on crypto a little bit, not a lot, but I give people the primer on some of the crypto that's out there, like Monero, for example, and how to safely use, or how to try to safely use Bitcoin. It can be difficult. But so a lot of different apps, a lot of different tools to switch to. So, for example, on Linux, you're not going to have Microsoft Office 365, which most of us need to create Word documents, do spreadsheets, PowerPoint, all that fun stuff. So the good thing is, in the Linux ecosystem, matter of fact, you can install it on Windows as well. The few Windows machines that I keep for various tasks for doing my network stuff, I actually put LibreOffice on there. So LibreOffice is a full replacement for Microsoft Office 365, and they're completely cross-compatible. So if I create a document in LibreOffice, let's say I create a LibreOffice Writer document, anyone in Microsoft Office can open it with Word, and it looks completely normal. Same thing with PowerPoint, same thing with Excel. Those are all seamlessly back and forth. They both read each other's formats. So instead of a DOCX in Word, it'll be an ODT, Open Document Text, but both can read the other one. So it's completely able to go back and forth. So there's a lot of tools like that I make people aware of, how to safely download stuff, how to safely visit different websites, using the dark web. It doesn't all have to be a scary, dark place. There's some useful stuff that you can find on the dark web and useful reasons for using it, even if you're not trying to visit a dark website specifically. Just using Tor, which is kind of your access to the dark web. Using that tool is a great way to help anonymize who you are online, especially if you're doing more sensitive investigations. It's just, again, another tool for people to use. So start to finish, operating system, all those applications, and all the thing. I do spend some time on day one going through what all the sensors on your phones are doing, what they're collecting, and just all the different types of things they can infer about us. So kind of give you the hook. I kind of scare you, give you the hook, and then reel you in with the solution to really do that. So again, 2 days is kind of the bare minimum. I tried when I first started doing this publicly. I started with a 1 day course, and it just is not anywhere near enough. Even the 2 day is really, really tight. But if folks have 3 days or longer, but if folks have 3 days, then I can get through all the content, teach you how to create and use virtual machines, show you how to install Chasm, how to use it, how to flash Graphene OS, how to configure it properly, all the different settings and apps that you might want, and some of the different software alternatives. So like Adobe, for example, they stopped supporting Linux like 15 years ago. So there's no safe way to run Adobe on Linux anymore. But we have a lot of other tools that replace Adobe for $0, by the way. So that's the beauty of Linux and Graphene OS, this whole ecosystem. Not everything, but almost all the software you're going to use is completely free. Not just open source where we can see the source code. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. To be able to, I don't have to trust a company. I can look at the source code myself. The same with like encryption. I'm just trusting math. I'm not going to. I don't want to have to trust Google or Amazon or Microsoft. I want to be able to trust things that we know are sound. So using encryption where possible, especially for data at rest. That's kind of the big picture, or maybe a little bit focused in, but yeah, the DHack covers kind of the full comprehensive but fully exhaustive list of things to think about. So it is pretty overwhelming. But again, just kind of sit back and relax. You don't have to really do anything. You can ask questions. And I do a lot of, it's basically just show and tell for 3 days where I show you all these tools, how to use them, and why you should be using them, or why you should consider using them. Yeah, and it's always evolving because AI is now a part of it, because AI is a part of our life. So initially when I first started teaching this like 4 years ago, AI wasn't really available to us the way it is now. But now AI is a pretty significant part of the course because there's just so many use cases for both. One, there's a lot of people are going to governments, people are going to misuse it like any other tool. So how can we, and security feature, like again, AI can find flaws in any system. You can point AI at a specific server or your personal computer, and they're going to find a way in. So, and that is easy to do nowadays with AI. So on the flip side of that, what I'm working on is the defensive side. So using AI as the defense to find those flaws first and patch them before another AI that's weaponized against us finds a way in. And I think that's going to be the model going forward, where, just like you have antivirus, hopefully on your Windows machine, if you're running Malwarebytes or McAfee or whatever, it's going to be not just antivirus, you're going to have AI of some flavor running on your laptop looking for, different types of any type of flaw that it's going to be continually scanning your network and your devices for any flaws, open ports, any vulnerable code, anything like that, and looking for signs of remote access, etc., to warn you if someone does get in. It can see those attributes and block it and react to it and inform you. So intrusion detection as well as some intrusion prevention using AI. I think that's going to be the necessary thing going forward pretty quickly here. It's coming really fast. That's the scary part of this, is how fast the AI world is moving. Really faster than government is already very, very slow to respond to, like the tech world, as tech advances really, really quickly. And almost by design, our government is doesn't have the ability to move that quick. Now we accelerated that, and it's compressed that timeline of change is so short. We're not going to be able to regulate fast enough. And I'm not saying we should necessarily regulate AI, but we're just not going to be able to react to it as quick as we'd like on the defensive side. So yeah, there's a lot to ponder in, I think this year. Last year was, pretty decent shakeup, but this year I think is going to be probably one of the biggest changes that we'll ever see, or have ever seen up to this point in our lifetimes, for sure. I'm 45. I know you're not too far off. So, we kind of grew up in that analog age. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 23 or 24. And now, kids have them almost, after delivery. Access to technology right out the gate. So, so I kind of see I'm, able to go out, turn my phone off, and go to the woods and just, check out from the internet for a while, away from keyboard, as we say. But it's coming at us pretty fast. But again, there's a lot of short, easy things you can do to defend yourself. The one thing I'll put out there as well, myself included, none of you are going to feel like you're ready to take the plunge, if you will, into the digital privacy. You're like, well, I don't have time to learn a whole new operating system. I don't have time to transfer my phone. And I promise you do. It's not as hard as you think. And you are going to make mistakes. Like, I've been doing this all day, every day, probably have like 20,000 hours doing this stuff. And I still make mistakes every single day. So that's just, we're human. We're going to miss, we're going to accidentally download something we shouldn't. We're accidentally going to not toggle on a setting that we should have, or we're not going to be using, a VPN all of a sudden, or, oh crap. So you just accept the fact that you are going to make mistakes in this, and that the best way to learn, and often the fastest as well, but certainly the best way to learn, is to make mistakes, because those stick in your memory. First time you succeed, great, that was awesome. You don't really remember that very well because it just kind of worked out. No big deal. There was no adversity there. But when you fail, when you make a mistake, that imprints on your mind much harder, and you'll never forget that lesson. So that's, I think, one of the key takeaways is just, you can wade into the waters. You don't have to switch your phone overnight. Matter of fact, I tell people, don't do that. Get a Graphene OS phone up alongside your current device and just start using it as much as you can. You don't even need a SIM card. You can hotspot it off of your iPhone or your Google Android, or just connect it to the Wi-Fi at your house, start downloading the apps, and then just slowly transfer your stuff over. And then only when you're comfortable with that new device, then switch. And you may even want to keep two phones all the time. You may have an iPhone that you use because your family members only will use TikTok, and you're like, I'm not going to put that on my secure graphene phone. So maybe you do run two phones permanently. But there's a lot of tricks even with Graphene OS now. There's you can always do multiple profiles just like in any other phone. So that helps kind of sandbox, keep things separate, but it's not the most convenient. So they do have one that came out about a year ago called Private Space. So it's now part of the system. So you just enable that setting, and it's like a whole nother phone. It's kind of like a virtual machine, but on your phone. So it's like a whole nother phone playground. So you can install your apps in there just like you would on your normal device, but it's separate from the main profile. So you can, if you absolutely must install TikTok and Facebook and all that other type of junk, the big tech apps as they call them, the non-free and open source, the non-FOSS applications, the big tech data hoovers, put those in your private space profile. They can have a separate PIN code and everything. So there's a lot of cool features like that with Graphene OS. There's a duress PIN code now, so you can program in a duress PIN code. So you have your regular one to unlock your phone. Then you can have a separate one that will actually trigger a full wipe. So by default, these are fully encrypted end to end. There's no way to get into these things. Like even the secret squirrel boys at the NSA, as long as you do like auto reboots and set a good strong PIN code on these, no one's getting in. So they're very, very secure, but they also work really good. I think if you know Android, if you're one of the probably about 30% of you that are on Android, it's very little learning curve. There's always some learning curve, but it's very, very small. The biggest learning curve is just where to get applications from is going to be a little bit different, perhaps. You can still use Google Play Store, but coming from iPhone, so the 70 to 80% of you that are on iPhone, it will be a little bit of a learning curve, but it's really not that bad. It's pretty quick. So yeah.
And then we got a question from the audience again. My ghetto fabulousness here because we got duct tape everywhere. So the question comes from Ted. He says, "Is there a way to verify that Pixel phone does not have on-built hardware that can act without consent?"
Are you talking about like the age verification stuff? Is that, I guess, it might be hard to do it through text, but.
Hey, Ted, if you're listening, hey, listen, is that age consent? And then BCG says, hey, I like that.
And the age consent stuff is popping up. That's one that I'm watching closely, as are a lot of people. So some distributions have already said, yes, sir, we'll go ahead and bake that into our operating system. No problem. And that's obviously a huge invasion of privacy because it's not just verifying your age. The way they do that is by identifying you. It's not just, hey, how old are you? It's, hey, who are you? So that is a huge privacy threat. And especially when that's baked into the operating system level, that's no bueno. So Graphene OS is one of the few right out of the gate without missing a beat, without thinking about it. They said, we refuse to participate and we'll never bake that into the operating system. And if there's even if that's not what you're talking about, if it's something similar to that, you can rest assured that if it's something we don't want, from a privacy or security standpoint, Graphene OS is not going to participate. They're not going to program that in. That's why this project exists, is for that maximum privacy, maximum security. And so far, they've held up to their word. They are working on another phone, by the way, so they don't forget. Because a lot of folks will ask, hey, I have a Samsung or fill in the blank phone. Can I flash Graphene OS to it? And the answer is no. Even if you have a Pixel, the answer is still probably no, because it's carrier locked or not fully unlockable. So you do have to get the OEM unlocked version of the Pixel phone to flash Graphene OS, but they are in cahoots with Motorola now. So sometime, I have no idea when, but sometime in the future, more than likely there will be a Graphene OS option on a specific Motorola phone. So we'll definitely be testing those out as soon as those are available. But right now you can get Graphene OS on everything up to a Pixel 10. So they're, again, pretty easy to flash. For folks that are looking for phones and they want Graphene OS, me personally, I think the 8 models are the best to go right now, just because they're very cheap, because there are a couple models behind, right? So we're on the 10 right now as of, I think it was September, October last year. So 10's the newest one, but it's also the most expensive right now. And really from the 6 forward, I still run a 6 Pro. One of my backup phone is a 6 Pro. I'm running a 7 Pro right now with a nice broken screen, by the way.
Character building.
But the 8 Pro or the 8 or 8 Pro, any of the 8 models, they're very, very cheap. but the newer phones don't really add any feature. Now the Pixel 9 did add one small thing, satellite communication capability, but there's not really any service for it yet. So yeah, T-Mobile's got the deal with Starlink where you can get like text messages out in some cases from areas where there is no internet or cell phone, but that's not really a thing yet with Graphene OS. So the 9 is the first one that has that satellite chip, and then all of them going forward have that satellite capability built, baked into them. That's just going to be an inevitable thing. It's going to be a Starlink for now, but I know there's at least one other. I think it's Amazon just bought. I can't remember the name of the company, but Amazon just bought one that they're going to compete. I think with looks like they're going to compete with Starlink with Elon. So it's always, you can see them at nighttime. You can see the the satellites. They're low Earth orbit satellites that are flying around. Lines of them you'll see going across the sky. So I do have Starlink. I love it. It does work really well. So now we're very shortly going to have that capability baked into our phones. You're not going to be sending 4 gigabyte movies over it, but you can get a text message out if you fall and break your leg in the Grand Canyon where there's no cell service, right? So that will be coming. So the Pixel 9 is the first one. So if you want that possibility, get a 9 because they're a little more expensive than the 8s, but they're still a lot cheaper than the 10s. But the 8's kind of that sweet spot right now. If you're looking to buy one, I would just go with an 8 or an 8 Pro.
Hey, and then Ted clarified it. He says no for for example, the chip and let me say this. Make sure I get this right. No, for example, the chip the phone used to communicate over Wi-Fi, the hardware layer. Are there chips that can communicate and prevent them?
Yeah, so far there hasn't been anything found because that's always been obviously a very big concern. If we have something that's basically below the operating system and baked into the hardware level. So, for example, when you boot up, even with Graphene OS, when you boot up your phone, just like a computer, even though it's got Graphene OS, there's no more Google. It's completely stripped off the phone with this custom operating system, Graphene OS. That hardware, you'll still see the Google logo or just say Google with their colors flash up on the screen as it boots up. But that's the same as like if you flash Linux to a Dell laptop computer, when you boot the computer up, you see that Dell pops up for a second and then it continues to boot. So that's baked in below the operating system level at the hardware. So most of these phones, I believe, are all system on a chip, where a lot of the stuff is basically imprinted onto one circuit board, right? So they're not assembling pieces anymore. So you can't like swap out your Wi-Fi card or your Bluetooth module. It's all kind of baked into the one chip. And so the biggest question that we had, of course, as privacy and security enthusiasts, unlike some of the tech channels that I run in, people, not myself, I haven't done a ton myself, but there has been a pretty extensive testing on to see, is there any other signal that's coming? Is there, like, for example, regular Apple and now Google does this as well, I believe. But I know Apple started this with the Bluetooth mesh network. So we think of Bluetooth range as like 30 feet, your earbuds, headphones, stuff like that, your speakers. But that's Bluetooth. There's Bluetooth low energy using the same chip. It's basically juiced with a little more power, and that range is actually up to 1/4 mile in line of sight, so a little bit less in urban environments where there's buildings. But that's baked in. So even when the phone is off, so your iPhone or your MacBook or your Apple Watch, all those Apple devices, and now Google devices as well. But all those devices, even when they're off, they're pinging off of each other via Bluetooth. Now it's a really low bandwidth. Bluetooth is not, you're not going to stream movies over it. So you're not sending a lot of data, but it's sending location data through this mesh network via the Bluetooth. Again, with the phone on or off, doesn't matter. So is there something like that could possibly get baked into the Pixel devices themselves that's below the operating system that somehow is able to reach inside the OS and report telemetry or do something, trigger something nefarious on the device? And so far the answer is no. There's not been anything discovered that I'm aware of. So that's the good news. But again, the bad news is, we don't manufacture the chips. We don't truly know what is lurking under that layer, right? So the big thing is looking for any possible, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi signal. GPS is listen only, but is there any other type of, is there a radio signal? Is there any type of, SATCOM that's happening on the device? So far it's passed with flying colors. So yeah, as long as they said no to the age verification stuff, they would not use a device that does those type of things. That defeats the whole purpose of the Graphene OS project. So far the developers over there have been going on donations. So they have been receiving a pretty decent amount of money from what I gather. So as long as they keep going, we have a legitimate operating system. There's a few others. There's like Lineage. Some folks will ask sometimes. I will do Calyx OS is another one, Calyx. So Calyx OS and Lineage both are not de-Googled. They use micro G, so it's essentially they're still using Google under the hood for a lot of the functions of the phone. But those are other options. I would rather use a Calyx OS phone than a regular Android. Certainly better than an iPhone. But there's just nothing else out there. There was like LEOS is another one. It was out there. There was a few others out there that one of them unfortunately went under. Divest OS was probably the other one that if Graphene OS dried up and blew away tomorrow, what would I use? Up until about a year ago, it would have been Divest OS was another really good one. But LEOS is another one that's available now. But Graphene OS is the only one that's truly de-Googled and stripped of all the Google stuff. And so far, the Pixels, if they chose a phone just because of the security of the hardware itself, is very, very good. Well, the best that's out there so far. So curious what they see with Motorola, and keep an eye on the supply chain, where the stuff comes from, and just monitor that. I'm curious because they've promised stuff in the past, like, hey, we're going to release X feature in the next 6 months. And then 2 years later, it still hasn't like the backups, for example, like Seed Vault backups on Graphene OS. They've been saying for like 4 years they're going to roll out some new, more stable version of it, and it hasn't come out yet. So I do hope the Motorola phones come out because we have seen some stuff with Google with Android 16. So AOSP is the Android open source project maintained by Google. It's still open source, and you can still use it to develop your own platform like Graphene OS or Calyx or these Android-based systems. But the way that they basically hid some of the tree of code. They basically hid some of that, so the developers at Graphene OS or anybody else essentially have to backwards engineer that to figure out what that is. And that's above. I'm not a developer or programmer, so that's a lot of that stuff is above my pay grade, so to speak. But Google is intentionally, at least it feels like, I don't know for sure, but it does look like Google is making it intentionally more difficult for those other developers like Graphene OS, Calyx, Lineage, etc., to basically create their own ecosystem. It just creates more work for the developers to backwards engineer that stuff. Plus, they're also not releasing the updates or the patches, the open source version. They're releasing the patches. So now you can, in Graphene OS, you have the option when you first fire up the phone for the first time and configure it, and you can change it later in the settings. But do you want to get those most up-to-date releases, even though the source code hasn't been published yet? So the developers have not released the source code, but they have patched a known vulnerability or bug fix. So in most cases, I will opt to keep those. But if you want maximum privacy and you only want open source, so that's another thing too. Like with Apple Pay, Google Pay, you can't do the Google Pay on the Graphene OS phone. The actual I don't want to call it the firmware, but the software for that chip, to the NFC chip to use your Google Pay option, that is all proprietary code. There's no open source to that whatsoever. That's a Google thing. So unfortunately for folks that do want to use it, doesn't affect me at all. I still use the old credit cards or cash as much as I can, or crypto. But for the folks that do need that tap to pay, unfortunately, that's not an option with Graphene OS because that source code for that is not open. So they won't bake anything into this operating system that you don't want, as far as keeping it open source and completely the ability to audit the code at any point. And that's been really, really good. So yeah, I can't say enough great things about them. I could definitely be a salesman for them. I guess I am a salesman, sort of, but I just sell the
You're
device.
an evangelist. You're a graphene evangelist.
That's exactly. I'm an evangelist for the cause.
Speak the good news to the people.
I don't really make money off the hardware, so I just the training is how I like to get out there, and that's the best way to support what I do over here. Because I'm doing this full time, researching. It does cost money for hardware and stuff to test it, and of course the time to invest to keep up with all the things. Just even in the free and open source world is enough, but then keeping up with all the other nonsense that's happening with Windows and Apple products and all the stuff that these companies are doing behind the scenes, and of course now we got to add in keeping up with all the things AI, which is impossible. That the AI is just every day there's this new version was released or a completely new option for AI was released. But I've kind of latched on to what I've think are the best and easiest options for folks to do. So in the course now, you will get some show and tell on how to use AI, which ones to use, et cetera, which ones are private. Not just, there's like Proton Lumo, for example. Proton Suite's pretty good. There's some folks will question because it's CERN. They've got ties to World Economic Forum. So if you're skeptical of that crowd as I am, it's definitely something to think about and watch. But they say, well, I'm not sure I trust Proton because there's pictures of some of the some of the people, the investors are World Economic Forum tied. And I go, well, what other options do we have? There are other options, but Proton is by far the most convenient, just from getting people out of the Google, Apple, and Microsoft ecosystems and getting them to something that's much more secure that you have full control of. Oh, and by the way, it's all zero knowledge encryption end to end. So not only is it encrypted from between your device and the servers, or from your device to the other person's device, that's completely encrypted, so no one can intercept that and decode it. But even Proton doesn't possess the key. So the key is generated on your device, and then only the user can decrypt that. So even Proton can't see your searches using their AI is called Lumo, Lumo. So Lumo is their private AI. It's not as good as ChatGPT or Anthropic, but it's not bad. I use it every day in conjunction with the other stuff. I use a lot every day, but Proton's one I use every day because if you do have a document, like say you're feeding it medical records to help try to diagnose an issue with you or a family, loved one, whatever, I feel safe putting that information that it contains PII, social, address, things that I would never give to Anthropic or ChatGPT, OpenAI. I'm not going to give that stuff to those companies. But Proton Lumo, I'll absolutely upload it. But it just provides that ecosystem, email, VPN. You get cloud storage. Now Standard Notes is owned by them. Great note-taking app that I use every day. You get a lot of password manager. You get a authenticator application now for your two-factor authentication. So you get a lot of stuff. And by the way, that's all free because it's freemium, right? You always question something that's free. Free VPN or free email. So you have a Gmail or Yahoo Mail. Why is it free? That's the first question I want to know is how do you pay the bills? Because hosting an email is not a small feat. That is something that most people should not do. Even if you know how to do it, you should not, in most cases, host your own mail server. It's challenging from a security standpoint and maintenance. You have to have physical space, land. You got to either rent or buy, pay taxes on. You need electricity to run it. You need a building, which has to be the code and everything else. You need staff to build it, staff to run it. You need internet. There's a lot of things you have to pay for to provide an email service to someone. So how is it that you can provide this, bulletproof, wonderful, convenient email for 100% free? It doesn't make any sense. But it does as soon as you realize the surveillance capitalism. The model is we collect all of your data, meaning it's not like a human necessarily is reading through all of your emails, although they very well could. It's just the robots are ingesting all the stuff. And now that we have AI, we're making it's just much more of a privacy threat and even a security threat. All that stuff is just out there for these companies to see. Now, in most cases, it's pretty secure. Google does a good job on security in most cases. So your information is secure from your Google Android phone to Google servers. The problem is the difference with Google as opposed to Proton, they have the decryption key. So they can see even the email that the angry email that you drafted up, but then you never hit send, even that's recorded. Anytime you push send on a text message, an email, anytime you receive a text, or email, or phone call, that's all completely recorded forever. So that's what my training is geared to, kind of unplug from the matrix and get tools like the Proton Suite. You can get on it for free, start using it, and if you like it, then you can do the first paid tier. Just wait for a sale, get the first paid tier. And there's other stuff. If you're 100% set against Proton for one reason or another, I don't agree, but that's fine. There's other options like Tuta, Tuta, formerly Tutanota. They offer a similar encrypted email. It's not as generous on the free tier, but there are other encrypted email options. But Proton's by far the easy button. They have a one-click. So your Gmail, for example, let's say, I don't even recommend dumping it. Keep your Gmail because you might have contacts in there from 10 years ago that are trying to reach you all of a sudden. You might want to get those messages still, or there's just data in there that you want to be able to search. Or maybe you just want to keep using it, but then stand up another private email. So you've got two different things going on. You can one click, you can import all of your Gmail into Proton, and now you can monitor. You can send and receive emails as your Gmail address from within your Proton Mail. So you have both Proton Mail and your Gmail. That's only on the paid Proton tier, but you can import all the email. So you have 10 different email addresses with Yahoo, AOL, different companies. You can import all those into Proton. That way you've got one user interface for all the emails. There's stuff like Thunderbird, for example. There's email clients. So there's a lot of options.
I liked about the Proton is it had the anonymous, I can't even say it, the anonymity layer, right? So if you're logged into like, Jiffy Lube, right? And you're trying to schedule an oil appointment, it'll say Jiffy Lube 123 at pm.me, right?
Yeah.
It minimizes it, but it comes to your email. So when Jiffy Lube's database gets hacked, they're not that email only exists for Jiffy Lube, not for you. So it's a little
exactly. It's an easy way to see who's selling your data. Because when I could go to I go to Toyota, same deal. I go to Toyota. I just run like 33 Mail. There's Alias Email now, Anon Addy. There's like Gorilla Mail. There's a bunch of them. But I'll just put in. I've got one of these kind of on the fly. I'll just say I'll make up an email. I just know the actual email address. Everything after the @ symbol, it'll be like graphenegoat.simpleLogin.com or graphenegoat.33mail.com. So whatever handle you grab, it's going to be that same for every email. So then when you go to Toyota to get an oil change and they require an email to get your 10% coupon or whatever, whatever it is, I just put, 10 December 2025 or Toyota at graphenegoat.33mail.com. That goes into my Proton email. I can filter and sort those. So if I don't want to see them, I can filter them out. I can search for them, put them in their own folder, tag them. There's a lot of options, but that gives you a lot more control. Just like with everything with privacy, whether it's talking about payments, viewing YouTube anonymously, VPNs, everything is about, and alias email, everything is about putting a proxy between you and that thing that you're trying to access. So in the case of like YouTube, they're collecting everything, like where your mouse is on the page, how long you watch the video, and where you stop.
I dwell.
Yeah. Now,
they know your I dwell, right? Where are you looking on that specific ad, right?
Where you're looking, how fast you're scrolling Facebook, how fast you scroll, and which posts do you spend more time on versus which ones do you blow past. So all that data is being collected. And of course, IP address and all the attributes about your machine. So using stuff like FreeTube, for example, is a really good one that's now both not just desktop, but also mobile. There's a ton of them for mobile. It's like New Pipe, Pipe, Libre Pipe, or Libre Tube. The FreeTube is a really good one that I use, Brave New Pipe, etc. There's a lot of called front ends for viewing YouTube videos, and they function exactly like YouTube, except you don't sign in, you don't give YouTube near as much data. So with the alias email is the same concept. So you're trying to stay safe and anonymous and just protect your true email address. I almost don't even, the true email address that my account is created under, both Proton and like if I have a Fastmail account, for example, that runs some business email and that. I don't ever use that, Aaron.Amick at Fastmail or Proton or whatever. I don't use those hardly ever. I'll use one of those alias emails instead because it separates. If I'm doing business, I'll use, my business email address at proton.com or my private domain like graphenegoat.com. I'll use those emails within Proton, and that just gives me that proxy between, that person that's on the other end. They're not able to see my true email address. Private payment options, privacy.com, excellent virtual card service, free. It doesn't cost anything. You do have paid tiers, but you actually get cash back. So even the paid tiers can actually be $0, or you can actually make a few bucks a month with privacy.com. But again, you're doing a proxy between you and your bank, or your actual banking, and then whatever merchant you're dealing with. You give them it's not a fake card, but it's a virtual card. It doesn't exist except in software, but it's linked to your bank account. And then you can just spend it like a normal credit card online. So that's how I buy things. Like you could buy a PDF book, digital download. There's no reason why they need my home address because they're not delivering anything. They don't need my true name. They don't need my true email or phone number. You just give them a bunch of trash information, a fake, alias email address that you still get. That way you can, receive the download. So there's a lot of things like that like in the course, go through a lot of that stuff. But for the folks that are out there hunting around the internet, especially if you do get into dark web stuff, that's where people are even more apprehensive, and rightly so. It's this whole world, like a normal internet experience, or you just get on Google Chrome, like the average person. One, they're logging everything that you're doing. So that's never, it's kind of unsettling. But, from a security standpoint, they do pretty good. But again, they're collecting everything. So from a privacy standpoint, horrible. But again, they're collecting all this stuff and you're doing your normal searches. But there's a whole nother internet out there. The dark web is just basically a decentralized internet. So anybody, like I've got a Raspberry Pi that's a dark web server. It's hosting a website and it just sits in my kitchen connected to the network. And so it's hosting a dark web service. Normally in the internet, we have DNS, or the domain naming systems, like the phone book of the internet. So when I type in graphinggoat.com, the computer doesn't know where that's at. It has to, just like a phone number. When you open your phone to call your best friend, how many do you know the actual phone number to your best friend? I don't. You pull up their contacts, Johnny so-and-so, and then you just hit call, and it translates that name into a phone number and dials it. So that's how the internet works as well. So it takes that domain name that you type in or whatever search query, and it translates that to an IP address of that actual web server where that website is hosted. So in the dark web, we don't have a central indexing like that. So it's completely just the Wild West. It's really hard to find certain things. So it's very easy to hide all kinds of stuff. And there's probably a lot of this. They say everyone on the dark web is either, a Fed or someone working for a Fed. No, there's a lot of legitimate stuff to explore. So if you're, especially, I don't know how much, if you're a historian or a private investigator, how much is the dark web going to help you? It may not at all, but there's definitely stuff on there now. One thing that we do collect is like the breach data, for example. Every day someone's getting, company gets breached, so their servers get hacked into. All that data gets exfiltrated, and in some cases they sell it, but a lot of it's just given away. Eventually, you may have to wait a little bit, but someone's going to eventually just give all that away. So we just collect all that data into a database that lives on a server. And now, we use it as part of our investigate. It's another investigative tool, but you can absolutely do that. So that requires some dark web skills in most cases, because those forums, the places where people hang out to share that type of information that's questionable, it's completely legal to obtain it. Just like if, a journalist, someone steals something, like, I don't know, Ashley Biden's diary, for example, you receiving a copy of that diary, you're not doing anything illegal as a journalist. Someone gave it to you. As long as you didn't steal it, you're not in any trouble. So it's kind of the same thing with the breach data. It's a gray area in some cases.
If your prime motivation is defensive, right? So in other words, I'm making sure my stuff's not on there. That's why I got the database. Yeah. I'm just checking for me. Oh, and it has a bunch of other information there too. So
there's public ones. So have it been pwned, for example, is a really good one. This guy in Australia, so he maintains that one. It's really good. It's kind of a go-to to see if your email has been involved in a breach. Now, people think, oh my God, so my email was breached, it was hacked into. Like, no, it's not what it means. It could, but generally with the breach data, when you see, hey, I typed in like an old Yahoo email address that I had, 20 some years ago, that's been involved in like 12 breaches or something crazy. But it's not that someone hacked into my email. It's just that when I signed up for something using that email.
Yeah, they hack Jiffy Lube's, corporate account with their mailers and advertisements and all that. Yep. The one thing, we got a couple of comments here. Ted says in September, Google will push developer registration so you can only install apps from them. Will this affect Graphene OS?
Not yes and no. It kind of depends, right? So if you are trying to use, it just depends on the applications that you're trying to use. More so on the developers, because there are a lot of developers that want to remain anonymous. So one, they have to pay money, which sucks. But really the big thing, that's a real small potatoes part of that. The big thing is that they have to register and have their identity known to Google. The guys, of course, just like with anything else, it's for the children, it's for safety, it's and maybe it will help in that in some regard, but obviously, or at least to me, it's obvious that that's not the primary goal. Of course, they want to track and get more information and positively identify each and every person that's touching the internet. We're just marching that direction. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of what's going on today. They being government and through private entities like Google, they want to have as much ability to identify everybody as possible, and therefore exert as much control, filter who gets to access what. It's part of the age verification, same idea. So the developer stuff, you get, like, if you go on F-Droid right now, which is one of the free and open source software repositories, it actually has a little banner on the top that it's had for a while now since that was announced, with Google doing that with the developers. So it won't really affect those necessarily, but It'll pose a challenge just depending on which software you're using. So it's one of those, it depends, thanks for the, clear answer, guy. But it's, again, if you're a developer, that's going to, it's going to positively identify you, which means some applications are going to cease to be maintained and they'll no longer be available, but you can still sideload anything you want, especially on Graphene OS with a regular Google phone. If you just go to F-Droid, download it, if you try to install an app from F-Droid, it won't let you. You have to go into the settings and allow to install, APK from source from this specific repository from F-Droid in that case. So they do make it difficult initially to sideload stuff onto a normie, regular Android or Google phone. But with Graphene OS, it's no problem. You can just download F-Droid, and then you can download all there's about 5,000 different applications that are in F-Droid right now. There's Obtainium is another way. It's basically like a GitHub repo of sorts that's got free and open source software, stuff that's generally desirable and safe to use. Safe meaning not big tech junk. It's open source, trustworthy software. And there's other places like Aurora Store. Again, we talked about proxies. Aurora Store is the way that we can get any application free, open source, and all the other, TikTok, Facebook, everything, your bank, all the banking software and stuff. That you can still pull that through Aurora Store. It's pulling it from the Google Play Store, but it's just doing it through that proxy. So you're reaching out to Aurora Store servers, and you're saying, hey, I want to download TikTok. Hopefully not, but you want to download this application. Now Aurora server is going to forward that request to Google and pull that application down and then give that to you on your device. And that way, it puts a middleman, a proxy. And that way you can safely download something from the Google Play Store without giving Google all your information, or really much of any information. So the side loading is not really going to affect Graphene OS at all. So those apps that are out there, the APK files, like Proton, for example, you can fetch some of them in F-Droid, but most of them you have to go to Aurora Store or the Google Play Store to download those. But if you go on Proton's website, you do this carefully because you don't want to just download some sketchy APK from, Proton with 2 N's.me or .com.
It's houseofproton.org.
Yeah, it's like typo squatting. You don't want to. You have to be very careful where you download this from. But Proton site, like Signal, for example, if you use Signal application, hopefully you do. That's my primary go-to. But you can fetch that through Aurora Store or F-Droid too nowadays. But you can actually download the raw APK file. So this Android package kit, it's just an app. That's what you're downloading when you touch the Google Play Store. It's fetching an APK, but it's been signed and it's been verified by Google. So now going forward, those applications are the ones that are going to be subject to the identification of the developer itself. So in some cases, it won't matter because the developers are already well known. But for those that aren't, they want to remain anonymous, they're just not going to be able to do that. So I still don't know the full impact of what that's going to look like, a year, 2, 3 years from now. How much is that going to affect us? I don't quite know yet, but so far so good. I'm not overly worried about that one. The big one for me was just the age verification. That's an ongoing concern still. We're not done with that yet, by the way. There's been some positive movement to kind of squash some of that. But that we're seeing that again, some developers of Linux are just capitulating and it's tough. It's like Proton. If Switzerland suddenly changed a bunch of privacy laws, which they are, there are some laws that are up for debate, I guess. But if Switzerland suddenly says, hey, you have to start logging IP addresses of everyone that uses your VPN. I mean, Proton has a choice. Do you want to exist as a business, or do you want to get fined into oblivion? One way or another, you have to pick one or the other. So those are the difficult choices. So no different with this with Google. But the big one for me is the age verification or things like that. And even it was really concerning last year when when Android 16 came out and Google changed the way that they basically hid the source code, the tree. And again, I'm not a developer, so a little bit Greek to me, but that was extremely concerning because anything that jeopardizes Graphene OS, their ability to maintain the operating system is what it is now. That's highly concerning because that's the device I use every day. So keeping a close eye on it. Again, we don't have a lot of hard answers on what that's going to mean, but at the end of the day, again, we can still download stuff directly. So maybe TikTok's not going to be, well, that's a bad example. The bigger ones are going to be fine. They're going to be the same. But yeah, the ones that the free and open source stuff, on F-Droid, we'll still always have the ability to download and use those. It just means you may not be able to do so on a regular Google phone. But again, with Graphene OS, so far no concern with that yet. But again, we're seeing all that assault, that march towards eventually shutting this down. I mean, like France and some other countries in Europe were within the last like 4 or 5 months were, criminals use this Graphene OS thing. They probably do, right? Just like any other criminals use cash.
Criminals drive Hyundais.
Hitler
Criminals
used
drive
cash.
cars.
So, it's like crypto. Criminals use crypto. Criminals use all the same tools that everyone else uses.
Criminals eat at McDonald's. It's like,
so just
that is nuts.
hopefully we keep it alive. And so far, again, we got to keep it, support them if you can. So if you can donate to them, great. Any open source project, if you like, Signal, for example, even CIA was funding Signal like $30 million or something a year, like pretty significant. So there's, just like with that one, if you're a CIA operative in fill in the blank country, do you want some obscure, super secure, but some obscure application that no one else uses? Well, no, you want something that's ubiquitous, that you blend in with your environment because everyone's using it. So, and same with Proton. I don't have to trust Proton specifically because they're good at keeping their stuff open source. So I don't have to trust Proton. I don't have to trust the World Economic Forum or whatever ties they may have with Proton. As long as they have open source code and we can audit that, I just have to trust math. I can see how the encryption is baked in, verify that it's not programmed to collect telemetry and send it back unencrypted to Proton. That as long as we can verify that, the open source is the key, and that's the same with the operating system is the most fundamental. So anything that jeopardizes the operating system, the other thing that concerns me that I'm actually kind of surprised I haven't really done yet. Probably a reason there's a lot, like again, the web servers, most of the stuff that you use out there in the world, like space shuttles, aircraft, your smart fridge, your smart toaster, your car, it all runs on Linux, or most of it. It's almost all Linux under the hood. It's just the normies get to use the Windows trash. Microsoft or Mac at least works pretty good, but again, it's still spyware. But my concern is because of the ability for anybody on the internet with a web server, whether that's Facebook or someone like me with a small little website, we all have the ability. If you go to, I'll do a screen share real quick, see if I can dox myself a little bit. Let's go.
Tell me when to share it.
Go ahead. Go to deviceinfo.me, so deviceinfo.me. Again, I'm going to dox myself here, but I'm going to decline all the...
You've got that big dog protecting you. I don't know what you're worried about. So.
Yeah, we do. We like guns too. So. But this is an example.
The dog likes guns.
The dog, yeah. Well, as long as you shoot him, he gets a little upset. But so this is just an example of all the attributes. This is when we talk about fingerprinting. This is what I mean. These are all the things that can be seen about us. So I'm using Brave browser right now, so it does a pretty good job of obscuring a lot of this. So they have what's called fingerprint resistance. So it's actually resisting, but even there's detection to detect if you're resisting the fingerprinting. So again, there's fingerprinting.
He's up to something. He was masking it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's using something to obfuscate his, because you can there's different extensions you can get for like Firefox, that multi-count container, and there's one user agent switcher. So you can actually appear like you're coming from a Windows operating system when in fact you're on Linux or Mac or whatever, vice versa. So you can actually change a lot of the stuff. But just even with all that enabled, like the size of your screen, for example, like how many pixels, the actual size of your screen. If you have mouse, microphone, cameras, how many you have, are they enabled? If you have are you using a VPN or not? So it's VPN not detected, and I am using a VPN. Are you using Tor? There's my IP address of my VPN server. And so all the your location. So this grid location, right? That's the grid location, not where I'm standing, but that's the VPN server. But if you didn't have a VPN, that would be your actual grid of where you're standing right now. So that's not good. So all these things you can see about anytime you touch a website, all this information is visible. Again, you can detect microphones that are present, cameras, all these attributes, keep scrolling, but all these can be seen about you. So that's what they're collecting on. And so it's not just your IP address. And this is why I say like a VPN, it's still a very necessary, useful tool, but it's not an end all be all. The VPN is just one, it's just showing an IP address, and it's encrypting your traffic. So it does offer a lot of protection and security. but they can still see all this other data. So if you don't take measures to obscure that, that can all be seen about you, so that every click you do on the internet is collected, and it's actually pretty easy to unmask.
There was a nonprofit that was using a employee screening before they were hiring, and they were looking at the extensions. They wanted to know the extensions that the people used, and if they were doing like news filters or something, like if it was left right, they were looking at that, and they were actually screening based upon the extensions they were using in browsers that they detected from this other company that was talking to us, and they're like, hey. They were going through all the hires, and you had to give your email, your social media, and all that as part of that package.
Yeah.
The second thing is that same process, that same HR company got the government contract. So now when you're coming in customs, they're going to look at the similar profiles. So when you're crossing a border, they're going to say, okay, he's using this screen. This is his, which way he's going, because of the extensions to filter what you see on the internet. They're going to that level of trying to profile you. It's nuts.
And plus with the tools that are out there now, and it's really expensive. We're talking like $1 million software. Some of it's a little bit cheaper, but there's like OnTech is one, for example, ONTEC. I actually saw they had a booth at ISC West a couple of years ago when I was there in Vegas, checking out all that stuff. But there's companies like that do real-time social media monitoring. So you can just plug in a target. It'll find all those alias, burner Facebook accounts that you have. Yeah, the sock puppet accounts that you thought were anonymous, but you use the same computer and the same IP address, all that stuff. Again, they can figure out, this is how they can do a lot of this detection of who you are. So it's not just your IP address and, hey, I'll just not sign into Google and I'll use this VPN and I'm good, right? Well, not really. Even there was a good DEF CON presentation a couple of years back. I think it was it 30 or 29? I don't know. It was within the last few years, there's a DEF CON presentation. They basically were able to easily unmask. They just got raw. You could buy this data, right? So they bought a whole bunch of data, internet browsing collection history, and the users were anonymized. There was no actual user data linked to who that person was, but they were able to, by the fourth website you visited, and especially if you visit like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 different websites, it's like easy. So they were able to pinpoint through all these millions of people, just based on like 4 or 5 websites, the same ones. How many people go to the same exact 5 websites every day, or 5 days a week? Down to like, well, there's only 4 people that go to these 4 websites every day. And they were able to unmask like a judge, different public officials, and say, oh, this judge was searching for medicine for herpes, cleanup or herpes or something. Stuff that's really private that you don't want out there, even though the data was, quote, anonymized. We see that a lot, like, oh, we collect the data, but it's completely anonymous. Well, that's bullcrap. With internet, your browsing history, it doesn't take very much. If you got 50 tabs open and it's constantly making connections every day, as long as they collect that, which they are, all this type of data, like they're able to attribute all that data and positively identify you in so many different ways using this fingerprinting that they're doing. So that's my biggest worry, is using that type of data with the capabilities to do that. One of those on this device info.me that you see on the screen is the detection of the operating system. So what if we have some law that gets passed where, hey, because of terrorists, we got to save all the babies from the fire and save the children. We have to verify every single person that visits every single website. Now they're like saying, oh, well, you can only visit this website if you're on a, quote, approved government device. So Windows, Mac, iOS, or Google Android. But if you're coming from Linux, or if they detect that you're on a non-standard, non-approved device, there's nothing like physically stopping them from implementing that change. So that's one thing that's always worried me. I hope it's a long way off. I hope it's never, but I hope we don't ever get to the point where it's like, oh yeah, you can't log into your bank from a Linux computer, right? We're not there yet. Hopefully we never get there, but that's another concern. As I know some of the questions seem to be around the challenging stuff that we're facing with the developers having to give up who they are and causing some potential problems there. The age verification, of course, is a huge one, just being baked into the operating system. So there's a lot of concern, but that's one of mine, is just doing something as simple as detecting the operating system and saying, hey, you have to have this approved, signed certificate, valid copy of an approved device to visit anything on the internet. That can be easily implemented. So I hope we don't see that, but just people are aware. They can see that anytime you touch a website, all that, I'm not saying every website is collecting that, because not all of them do, but guaranteed if it's Google, Facebook, Microsoft, the big 5 or 6,
LinkedIn.
they're collecting anything possible. Even if they don't know what they're going to do with it, they're just going to collect it anyway.
Oh yeah, then they offer it for sale, and then we buy it. Then we buy it. The bad guys buy it. Everybody buys it.
You can buy it. You can buy cell phone data. Now it's actually hard to buy little bits because they want to sell you a whole bunch because it's more money and it's less work. It's just more efficient. But
we're getting those heat maps.
Buy data.
It's half of what we do is you get those heat maps. So we just we can order it by region, and we've got the monthly subscription. So it's easy to get that heat map.
Yeah,
you can see who's with who.
Like Google, for example, like they know who's going to win the presidential election probably 9 months out, if not more, because they have a heat map of every single human being in this country, where they live, and you can filter and sort however you want. Like look up like Moonshot, for example, is one of their programs. Jigsaw. Just start looking at Rob Braxman does a pretty good dive into some of these programs.
I actually had a Brax phone. Rob Braxman. I had one of his original Brax phones.
And he's got some good stuff. He gets dogged on a little bit in some of the online communities because he basically locks the phone down where you're kind of dependent on him for updates and some of these other stuff, but still a good product. Like if there was nothing else, I would use one. I don't have any problems with it.
First gens had a problem because the IMEI, he didn't register it, so you had to kind of go in and once they did that, you're like, but it did what it was supposed to do initially. I mean, this was like 4 or 5 years ago when they first came out.
Yeah, and I think he's on like Braxphone 2, and he sells routers and stuff. But the stuff is all easy to do yourself, and not trying to take business away, or I don't make money on the phones. But these things also, because they're fully unlocked, to be able to flash the device in the first place, they're also carrier unlocked, so you can put any SIM card, eSIM or a physical SIM card, in this device and use
that's
it.
huge.
And you own it, because normally you go to the Verizon or the Apple store, you sign a contract. They do it the first time. They do a full credit pull, and then subsequent phones, they're going to do at least a soft credit pull. So they link your name, date of birth, social, all that information that's in the big 3 and some of the other minor credit agencies. They positively identify you and associate that with the specific IMEI, which is the serial number of that phone that you can't really change. So that now that as an identifier to you, and you effectively you rent the phone because you're paying them like $50 a month or whatever for 2 years. So you have to sign a contract, right? So you don't own that phone, and the bootloader's locked down, so you can't flash anything else to it. You can't even use another SIM card. Even after you pay the device off in 2 years, they're going to try to force you onto a new one, because they will take the old one back and they'll sell it, resell it to capture some of the money. But so they will take your old phone. But even after you, quote, own the phone after the contract is up, you have to call the carrier and they have to unlock your device so they can use another SIM card with it. In most cases, they will do that, but that requires you to call customer support. That sounds like a lot of fun, right? So you just get one that you own out of the gate. Even if you don't want to buy one from me, I can show you where to buy it, because it is really easy to flash yourself. It's like 5-8 minutes tops. It's really easy, but sourcing the device is the hard part. But once you have that, you have a device that you own outright. It's not definitively tied to you. That IMEI, you could purchase it with cash. I sell a lot of them with cash or crypto or money order. I've got money orders sitting on my desk right now waiting to cash for someone that paid for like a router in money order. So people are taking steps to do the right thing and buy a device that's not tied to them, and they're pretty careful about not installing Facebook on it. So there's a lot of folks that are kind of seeing the way. And again, kind of my mission is to evangelize and make the word known. There's like this weird operating systems, these Linux, Graphene OS, they exist and they're good. They're really easy. And I say, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say because you use it every day. Of course it's easy. But it really is. Almost everybody that's convinced to get over and at least try Linux, even if it's only part-time, that's fine. A lot of people, even like Michael Bazell, again, like Apex Predator, all things privacy and security, like really just super in the know. He uses Mac OS for a lot of his production when he writes his books or does other. There's really great art programs that are only available on Mac. Mm-hmm. So there's utility for them, so you don't have to throw them all away. You may need them for work, so that's a common one. But even just getting over part-time to Linux computer, that just carves out, and now it removes half of the data that you would otherwise be giving to these companies. So that's still a huge win. They say, well, they already got all my data. Well, they have all your data so far. So let's not, just like when you're digging a hole, what's the first thing that you do?
Stop digging.
Digging. Same thing. And like, well, but they already know who I am. Yes, they do. And they know everything about you up to now. So if now forward we use something else, you cut off the spigot of that data, then now they don't have anything else going forward. And then that's just a better place to be. Yes, they might still know your birthday and your social, but you still shut off all the telemetry that's happening. For example, so I had never installed, I had a Facebook for a couple of years, a long time ago, but finally I didn't do it for years. And finally my friends kept bothering me like, oh, you should get Facebook. It's so fun. And finally I gave in and just made one, never used it. And then a couple of years go by, I finally got on it and got addicted to it. And part of me walking away from social media actually is what gave me the time to start doing all the digital stuff that I do now. So if that's any encouragement, social media is absolutely toxic.
God forbid you should do something useful and productive with your time. What?
We don't have the bandwidth as humans to interact with millions of people, even thousands of people online. It's just not like, yeah, if you're a company or, you know, a personality of influencer or whatever, you want to put out stuff, that's one thing. But to actually try to engage with your friends, you know, oh, I got 3,000 friends online. That's a bunch of bull crap. Like, talk to the people that are around you. My social media is Signal group chats that we share, hilarious dark humor memes on. They're probably illegal in some countries, but yeah. So that's my social media, is people that I know and can interact with face to face, or at least I have in the past, not just. But yeah. So there's all of that. So the other thing I started off to say, I almost lost my train of thought. But so I had Facebook for like 2 years or whatever it was. So I just logged out and never logged back in. So it still exists. I tried to delete it a couple of times, and it was like, sorry, can't do it. Try again later. So they didn't really, and it's not deleted anyway. It's not like I'm going to delete. They keep it forever. Any posts that you delete, it's still saved on their systems. But I had, so I never put it on my phone. So even though I had Facebook, I never installed the app ever. It was never on my phone. Never even went to Facebook on my phone, like in a browser. But because Facebook has my phone number, they linked this device. They tried to link this device. Well, they did, because they were hammering away at it. So at the time I was running, I had a VPN, but most of the time I was running Blockada, which is kind of a VPN / a way to see all the connections that are going in and out of your phone at a real granular level. So it's a really good way to audit.
Blockada?
It's called Blockada. It's Blockada. Blockada. Yeah, Blockada. Really, it's a good application. I prefer to use a VPN now, and then I use another service called NextDNS in most cases to accomplish the same thing. So 2 pieces of software instead of one. But the Blockada has a free tier. It's not bad. So I was running that. And again, I'm never logged into Facebook, never did the app on the phone. Facebook knew that phone number belonged to me. It logged over 500,000 attempted connections to my phone in a 1-year period, because it's just logging. It counts them, so you can see. So I kept and there was multiple photos. It's not just Facebook; it's all these subdomains. So
Facebook is a stalking girlfriend. Holy smokes!
Yeah, if your phone's sitting there and then you pick it up, it's sending telemetry to Facebook, and Verizon and Google, whoever. So it's thousands and thousands and thousands of connections a day. So that's why the battery on this lasts like 2 or 3 times longer. If you don't have a SIM card in this, you can leave. I had one of these. What was I doing? I flashed a phone, and I forgot to. I actually used the phone to flash the Graphene OS for customers. I actually use another Graphene OS phone. So I flashed the phone with I have one dedicated phone. That's all it's used for. It's a nice clean device, and that's what I use to flash the customer devices. So it's a known clean environment. So I'm giving them good stuff. But yeah, I forgot and left it on. I turned the internet off, but I forgot and left it on. And literally, it was like 7 days later, 6 or 7 days later, I picked it up to do another one. It was at like 20%. I'm like, oh crap! I left it on, but because it's not sending telemetry, the battery it doesn't use much power. But regular phones, you got to charge them pretty much every few hours, or they die. So yeah, I prefer not to be tracked as much.
Well, that's good stuff. So if they want to do this course, they go to graphenegoat.com and then look up the DHAT course. And then
quick run through. I'll share my screen here. So quick run through the site graphenegoat.com. I know it's not GOAT as in greatest of all time. I promise I'm more humble than that. I am a little mountain goat. I love climbing. As you see on the site, every page has some pictures of mountain climbing, something like that.
You were there like last week. That was your office. You were sending photos and Signal, like, hey, look where I'm
at.
Yeah.
The Helens. We're doing
Nice.
Mount Tucson and Baker back to back here next week. So I'm looking forward to that. So I love climbing. So that's the goat, Graphene OS, Graphene, and then goat. It's kind of a little mountain goat. But on the site, let me click through. So main thing there, if you want to take the course, you can click on that. At the top of each page, also, you can just click on this courses icon, like so. But on here, I just did this one locally, and normally I do one in Arkansas in about like late July, sometimes early August. I don't think we're going to end up doing one this year. If we do, it might be a little bit later. Summertime's kind of we do it down at Darcy. It's a direct action resource center down in Little Rock. So I know
you're going down to Florida too, aren't you? You're going to be in
Florida to teach kind of a much longer version of doing like about a 2 to 3 week long training session for a group down there. So we're going to spend better part of a month going through all this stuff in great detail, getting devices set up, and more than just the DHAC content. We'll probably be doing some other ham radio related stuff and some other fun stuff. But yeah, mostly surrounding the digital hygiene and awareness stuff that we teach in the course. So unfortunately, it's hard to get enough folks together to do it at one time because people are busy. So I'll post the course usually like 5-6 months in advance. That gives people time to try to prioritize it, and then very few people end up making it a priority. Even people that sign up, I get the week prior, I might have like 15 or 20 signed up, and then I watch them drop like flies, and you get like 3, 4, average is about 7 people, and sometimes I think the most I've ever had is like 15. So it's tough to get people engaged and interested in the stuff because doesn't look all that sexy, and it's not very appealing, and it does melt your brain because it's very technical. But I think I break it down to where there's a lot of easy stuff. It takes 2 minutes to sign up for a Proton account, and that gives you 10, 12 different things. Proton Sheets, VPN, cloud storage, alias email, password manager, all the things, encrypted email. That's just like 2 minutes. That's all it takes. Let's say 10 minutes to first come, first serve, get your email address, and then you can mess with all the other stuff later, but just get your Proton account. Doesn't cost anything. Same, privacy.com. Takes like 10 minutes. All you need is your bank information. You log in, link it, and in about 48 hours, your account's approved, as long as it looks good, and you're ready to start using that tool right there is a huge one. Then you can use those tools. Now you have alias email and a private way to pay for stuff. Now you can start paying for other services like better VPNs or other email services or different things that you need. Now you can use those tools that we arm you with. I do front load those up, so do those in an order that makes sense for people to get them all the other tools. But so a lot of stuff is, even though the whole thing it is very technical in a lot of ways, it doesn't always have to be all that hard. So I do a lot of cheat sheets. I do a lot of video demonstrations showing how to set up a router, for example, like the routers that I like. Hey, out of the box, there's some settings that I don't like. So I'm going to go ahead and manipulate the settings, actually do some fancy stuff under the hood. I can actually SSH into the router. You can completely wipe the router and put OpenWRT on it. So I show people how to do all those things in a video that they can follow along and just do the same thing. Wham, bam, 10 minutes, and your router's good to go. You don't really have to mess with it. Log in once a month and check for updates. That's it, right? So there's a lot of little short trails, a lot of little nuggets of information to be aware of, but then a lot of little easy solutions for a lot of this stuff. And now, it takes time to get used to those tools. Just like any other tool, it takes time to learn how to use it and how to use it, best or properly. But most importantly is to start using the tools and get familiar with it. And you say, well, I don't have a need to send an encrypted email. I don't care if the government reads every single one of my emails. And that's great. And hopefully that is the case forever. But I think we can all imagine a time and a place where maybe you would want to send a message privately so that you didn't get thrown in prison or your head chopped out. Because there are places where if you get caught with sending certain information, your life is in jeopardy, and certainly your freedom, possibly your limbs. So having that tool, when do you want to learn how to use that tool? When your life is at risk or your freedom is at risk? Or do you want to learn how to use that tool when there is no consequences, right? So if you make your mistakes now, start getting familiar with the tools, and then you'll be armed with it. Even if you don't ever need that encrypted email, you have an option to send a private message to someone that's, for 100% is secure, that no one else can read. So that's, go through ways to encrypt data easily so that it's even NSA is not getting in. You use tools like Veracrypt, Cryptomator to encrypt your hard drives. Lux, Linux has a native built-in called Lux, Linux Unified Key Setup. That's a way to do full disk encryption of your computer, because even like you have a username or password to get into your user on your computer. If someone steals that computer, you can just pull the hard drive out and access that data, unless it's encrypted. The disk is encrypted, but a lot of the files and stuff are able to be recovered. So if you can do full disk encryption, if someone steals your laptop, to them it's still a computer. They can reinstall an operating system and make some money off of it, but your data is completely safe. I carry a little USB stick with me every day. It's encrypted with Veracrypt, and it's got my password manager on there and all my recovery codes and copies of like driver's license and things like that. But it's got all my passwords. I can access my whole digital life. But if someone steals that, if I lose that thumb drive, my passwords are safe, right? So I show people how to do that. And then even like, I always do the thing, I kind of backwards engineer stuff. So I say, hey, what if I am in a situation where I have nothing? I would call it naked with a butter knife, right? You're out there flapping. You have nothing. You have no thumb drive, no email. You're not going to remember, password and 2FA for all your accounts. So now I've set up a way where I have an encrypted cloud service where I can log in. And there's no 2FA on it, so it's just a simple login, username, password something that I can remember, but it's still a strong password. And on there, I have a Veracrypt container, and in that, so that's encrypted, so that's another password. Then you have to download that and then decrypt it using Veracrypt software. But then you need a password to unlock the password database. So really, I have to remember 3 passwords. Now there's 3 full layers of encryption. No one's getting through that, but I can access it from just memory. So I go through and teach people strategies like that. Death kits, we all die. Some of us, unfortunately, sooner than we should. And then especially for privacy people, no one's going to figure out all of our logins, right? Because we're privacy people, we hide everything. So I come up with strategies. I do some videos and do training for folks that show them how to build an entire safe way for someone to unlock your digital life if you die. For example, I gave like my sister-in-law, I gave a couple of people I trust. I gave one person the actually encrypted database file itself. So they have the actual file with all my passwords to get in and all the instructions, but they don't have the password to that vault. And then I gave another friend that I trust the password. So they don't have the vault, but they have the key to get into it. So if I die, they're instructed to link up, and then they can share that information and they can unlock my entire digital life. So if I'm dead, I can't be there to coach them through how to do it. So it's something you set up ahead of time. I know it's maybe a little off topic, but things like that. There's a lot of
super important. I had to deal with the estates, right? So half the estate, when you manage an estate after someone passes, it's a nightmare. Even if you have power of attorney, I'm the guy that executes the estate. We're going through probate. There's so much you can't access. It's insane. So having that ahead of time is actually probably the best thing you can do for families, is setting that up even for yourself, so your family doesn't have to go through all that. That's very important. That should be in your will, in your trust.
Yes, I just did a video, probably not the best one, but I kind of collected my thoughts because I just going through this exact process. My dad passed in September. He's like 93, expected, but even as good of the planning that was done on his end and the little bit that we could do before he died, knowing that it was getting closer and closer. And now my mom is also has dementia, is not able to do it. So I'm in charge of her finances and all her affairs. And then when my dad passing, there was a trust. So everything now, me and my sister are the executors, we're the trustees and controlling all that. And from that experience taught me a lot of stuff, especially knowing that experience, plus all my skill and training in the digital privacy space. Try to capture that in a video that I did recently on the Rumble channel. But I'll show you some more stuff on the website real quick, because again, even if you don't ever I don't post a lot of courses on here just because, again, it's hard to get people to sign up. So a lot of courses just kind of happen where people call and they say, hey, maybe it's a police department, or maybe it's a small group of 4, 5, 6, hopefully at least 8 people is about the 8 to 10 people for at least 2 days. That's about the sweet spot where it pans out to where I can travel, because it's kind of expensive. I normally charge about $400 to $500 per student. and that was just to cover. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's not just a 2-day or 3-day course or however long. It could be a 5-day course. It's not just that course. It's all the other stuff you're going to get, the support. You're going to get access to me to help troubleshoot. So I'm on my email, helping people through problems every single day. So you get some of that. But if you want to do the course, as long as you can muster about 8 to 10 people that can commit, I will travel anywhere in the United States and even other countries possibly. But anywhere in the United States, I'm happy to fly in. 8 people is about where I can break even and make maybe a little bit of money, just so I can cover travel and rental car, hotel, that type of thing. And if you got a phone, I don't mind camping out in the sticks. I just slept in a buddy had a retirement ceremony in Colorado. I just got back yesterday. He has a Sprinter van with a little sleeping thing, that's where I slept the last couple of nights. It's totally comfortable.
You wouldn't get out of your truck at the cabin up there north.
Yeah, exactly.
We're like, dude, we got a fireplace. It's warm in here. You're like, nah, man, I'm in my truck. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, so I'm fine with hobo camping, so I don't even need to cancel. So there's like 6 or 8 of you or more. More is better. But now if there's a lot more, if there's like 20 people, reduce the price as well. Just something so I can make it pencil out for me. But I'm more than happy to travel to where folks are at. And I do custom courses too. So a lot of folks, maybe they're more interested in like the commo side, like not full ham radio, but something they still want some of the digital privacy, but they want also a little bit of something else, right? There's other areas I do, like the penetration testing. So a lot of folks, that's the one that interests people a lot. So I don't have a full formal course for the pen testing stuff yet, but I've only been doing that a few years. But I do incorporate some of that. Sometimes I'll do custom training where it's digital privacy stuff and some of the red teaming stuff. Not necessarily because they're going to go be red teamers or pen testers, but again, to defend against, knowing what the offensive tactics and tools are, you can better defend against it. So with all that in mind, I just kind of give people the whirlwind tour of the website. So again, you're not going to see a lot of courses up there, but if you do, absolutely sign up, because I just don't do that many officially on the website. Most of them do happen. So I do have, if you're not able to make it, I do have a video on demand one that I did, super cheap. So instead of paying the full $400 or $500 for in person, I've got that one. So it's basically a equivalent of a 3-day
course.
Just
asking that. So there you go, BCG. Okay. If you're listening, there's the online course for you.
If you can stand if you can stand my voice for what's the equivalent? It's about 24 video modules. So it's about 3 days, 3 8-hour days worth of training. That's what that is. So I go through all the same topics. It's definitely not as good as the in-person one, but still a lot of good information there. So that's always available. But any of the stuff here, I'm working on a signals intelligence book. So I'm into all the little free and open source stuff, the commercial off the shelf tools for doing signals, signals intelligence, or collecting radio signals, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that type of stuff. There's a lot of really cool tools that I'm building, some anti-surveillance or surveillance detection kits that I'm building now for folks. So if you just want workshops, say, hey, digital privacy stuff, the stuff is cool, but I just want to get a working Linux computer up and running and one of these graphene phones so I can start. Great. We can focus the workshop so that by the end of the 2 or 3 day course, not only do you have most of the digital hygiene stuff, in addition to that, we've also gone through and actually installed Linux and Graphene OS on a device that you get to take home and keep, right? So you can just buy the device and we do the software for free, get you set up, get it all configured. So the course is kind of a choose your own adventure. Otherwise, the DHack itself is just a 2 to 3 day thing where I just run you through as much as I possibly can. Again, it's just so much information, and even the 3 day course, I have to go really fast. So people will miss stuff, but again, the website is all here. So if you have taken the course, matter of fact, one of the most common things that I get for the course is folks say, hey, I want to take it again. I say, what? I say, yeah, well, I really liked it, but I feel like I just need to take it again, maybe in a couple months or something. So I actually had a lot of people that come back, and because there's not that many people that take it, I do offer. So if you take it once, it's, buy once, cry once. So if you do, come pay $500 and you take the 3 day course, if at any point in time, anytime I'm offering another DHack in the future, you can sit on that course for free. I'm not going to charge you again. You can come in and get updates because the stuff does change, right? So even if you did go through and absorbed 100% of the information a year ago, if you come back in 1 year, there's going to be a lot of change, right? So you're welcome to come back for free as long as there's seats, which so far there's always been plenty of room. So if you're not able to make it, or even if you did take the course and your brain's going to get crushed with information, but so you're not going to retain all that. So whichever one, whether you're taking the course and you need to use this as your backup, as your kind of your notes, or if you don't have the ability to take the course for whatever reason, all this stuff on here is free. So there's a quick guide that I made that you can read through. You can implement. These are kind of the do first, and I've got them in a specific order in the guide. So they're very easy things. It's using a password manager, setting up two-factor authentication, your privacy.com, anonymous payments, anonymous email, and a few other things. So that's all stacked up there in a really quick, 30-minute read right there. There's a longer one, it's a little bit older, but still 98% relevant information in that one. I am starting a newsletter, so if you want interested in that, I will put out a newsletter. The Rumble channel is another way. It's not a regular thing. I'm not like a influencer, or there's not a lot. It's not a huge channel, as you can see, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of just anything.
Can't see it. It didn't. You got to share the tab.
Anything. Oh yeah, let's go over here. So let me share that. So this Rumble page, anything that's remotely related to digital security. Again, I've done stuff on downloading your bank statements once a year, because the banks only save your stuff for like a year and a half at most. So I always, at the end, like January, like the first week of January, make sure all the payments are posted, like usually about the 5th of January. I'll go in and I'll download all my bank, every transaction. I'll download the whole thing for the year. I do that every single year. That way I can go back as far as I have started collecting, because your bank will delete that stuff. Like they keep it, but you can't see it after about 18 months is the most you can go backwards in banking. So I do that. So I did one on trusts, wills, powers of attorney, managing estates, and how that kind of ties in with digital security, and how to kind of prepare, not just how to write the wills and trusts with AI, but also how to set up things like the encrypted hard drive, or the encrypted password vault that you give to one family member, and then another one gets the password, etc. Going through some of that planning for dying, plan to die. So there's a lot of different stuff. How to use some AI information, maps. A lot of people love the maps. So there's a lot of different options. That's one of the things you'll miss on the Graphene OS phones. You can absolutely install Google Maps on the phone, but of course I'd rather not, because it's Google and they're tracking everything. So there are a bunch of other alternatives, but this CoMaps is one that I really like, but there's a lot out there. So there are other, that's one of the bigger transitions I should give up front, that for Graphene OS. If you choose to completely, stick with the whole no Google at all, you will need an alternative to Google Maps. So that's out there, but the Rumble channel is there. Let me go back to here. Let me make sure. Yes, that's sure. Okay. The rest of it is, I call it the stack. So these are all, not all, but these are all the major topics that are covered in the course in great depth. And I actually use the website when I'm teaching. So the beauty of DHack, it's kind of free flow. There is a little bit of it. There's a minimum order to it. I do some things in a very particular order for a very particular reason, but the remainder of the course is kind of free flow, because a lot of the stuff is related. So for example, I might be down here talking about browsers and search engines, and of course related to that is, oh well, hey, which VPN, by the way, which VPN are you using? Then we'll go off on a tangent for half an hour on which VPNs we should be using, jump over here to this module, and then, oh crap, we got to go back and finish browsers. Or it may say, hey, hold that thought on VPNs, we'll get there, let's finish browsers, and then we'll get down to VPN. So we'll get through everything, but it's kind of a free-for-all. But this stack here has all the major topics that we cover. So you can click on any one of these, and it'll take you to, let's go to password managers, for example, one of the most important topics of the training, without a doubt. This is the huge foot stomp. Make sure that did share. Yes. Okay. So this is definitely one of the most important. So nice little graphic as far as demonstrating the power of doing long, unique passwords and how long it takes to crack them using all 4 character types. Again, it just walks you through, make it a little bigger. So it just walks you through, again, the top applications that I recommend for folks. There's certainly a lot of others out there, but these are the ones that I've tested and are highly trusted, fully encrypted, etc. So all these modules, go back. So all those modules that you see there, those are all tons of good information for free, whether you take the course or not. Those are all there for everybody to learn from. And if you find mistakes in there, and stuff does change, some of it does change. So if you do find something that you're like, hey, I don't think that's right anymore, or hey, like Like for example, Session, the messenger application, is basically not going out of business because they're not a business, but they're going to put in like the next 2 months, they're just basically closing up shop. That's sad. That was an application that was very much similar to Signal, but more anonymous because it did not require a phone number or any personal information. So I've got to go into my video chat apps, and I've got to update that section of the website. So if you do find something I keep it pretty well up to date, but if you do find something that's either completely wrong, needs more context, or needs updating, just send me an email and let me know, because this is for everybody. This is something I use this quite a bit, actually. For example, let's go to the email one here. Where's that at? The email one, for example, like when I'm configuring email, you've got to know some of the different ports. And I'm trying to find it. Should know exactly where it's at, but email strategies. Just as an example. So the bottom of this one, I put cheat sheets, not just for you, but for myself. Like down here, there's links to like, have I been pwned? You can check your email address to see if it's been involved in a breach. There's how to check an email. This is a good one that folks will probably find useful. This one, unfortunately, you have to sign up for an account and do an API. But of course, you can do it anonymously, so it's not giving up your true information. But you used to be able to just query up to like 10 email addresses at a time, and it shows you all these different attributes. So check this out. Oop, too big. So it shows you like when it was created. It shows you, is it suspicious or not? Has it been involved in malicious activity and spamming when it was created? And actually, you can see the Amick. You can actually see this email is correct. I'm using it on my Proton Mail. So there's the actual Amick record for that email. So you can tell exactly what's going on with any given email address. So if you get something, you're like, man, I'm not quite sure if that's spam. Do I want to click on that or not? You can run it through something like this and quickly see all the information. So I'll put links to all that stuff. And then another example, like the ports. I remember most of these. Like I always remember port 25, but some of these others, like I don't remember port 993. So it's just good cheat sheet and reference, not just for you, but some of it's for me. So each one of these modules here, map applications, all kinds of junk. And that's just those modules. Even below that, it did a section on AI that might be very interesting to folks. It's a good starting point to all things AI that I've been playing with, and a really good start to really get you up and running. The bare minimum, it's like which ones to use, right? But I have some videos on the Rumble that also take that further, but there's even some funny stuff if you like memes. But there's
Mockery is man's most potent weapon.
Yes, exactly. Most potent weapon. So there's some good ones there to help make fun of your friends that are not using Graphene OS yet. But there's a lot of the resources that I learned from and still use to kind of curate all this information into one spot. So I'm just kind of creating a one-stop shop where I'm not the end-all be-all, right? There's a lot of other folks out there that are doing excellent work. So I'd rather give them credit and just put all those resources here for people to use, not just my site, but go visit all these others. There's tons of good information on all these different links here. Obviously, it's going to take you a long time to get through all of them, but start picking through. They're not really I put the big ones I'll put up on the kind of the top of each section, but otherwise there's not really any particular order. There's a lot of these are just very, very good for their own reasons. And some of the different Telegram channels, I'm an admin on this one, Bones Tech Garage. Good friends with Sean over at Mark 37. They also sell, call them ghost phones, but it's Graphene OS. They sell tablets, computers, etc. Do training. So we do basically this very similar mission. We're out there to kind of evangelize and show people a better way of using free and open source technology, stuff that doesn't spy on us. But this is a good Telegram channel. It's a great way to keep up with the tech and get exposed to the terminology, the lingo, and what's the latest and greatest on, like, for example, the age verification stuff, or hey, is my baseband modem on my phone? Does it have phone home to China stuff programmed into it? These kind of conversations we're having over there and running those to ground. And so you'll get better answers over there on stuff like that, like more intelligent answers that I can give off the cuff. So if you're interested in that stuff, Telegram's a great place to go learn all that stuff. Telegram, don't think of it as a privacy messenger at all. It's not, but that's like my social media beyond my little Signal group chats for memes. Telegram's really the only anything. It's kind of a hybrid of social media / messenger app. I would never use it as a messenger app, but it's great as a social media tool. And then podcasts, there's actually not that many, but there are some decent ones out there. Watchman Privacy kind of comes and goes, but he's still putting out content, even though he says he wasn't. But all that stuff is there. Lots and lots. Again, just endless stuff. Different YouTube channels that are really worth watching. And then even tools on, these are some of the front ends I was talking about to view YouTube anonymously without giving YouTube any clicks. You can use some of these tools. There's a lot more, by the way, but these are just, this one's by Louis Rossman, really good. Gray J is one. You can view all that stuff. So that's all there. That's kind of the main. So that's the resources and links tab. At the top of every page, you'll have the same menu. So Graphene OS phones, Linux operating systems, resources and links is the one we were just on. The courses tab, if I have anything upcoming, I'll go ahead and post it there. Otherwise, just reach out and we'll do a custom course for you. If you only have 2 days, I fly in, I'll do it. If it's you want a full 5-day and you want to leave with working devices, we can absolutely do that. So most of the courses we end up doing are kind of custom, one-on-one, hey, call, get a small group together, and I fly to wherever and do the course for you, kind of tailored to whatever interests you. So if you just want the full shebang, I'll just pull the cord and I'll do my spiel. If you have something specific that you want to kind of lean heavily in, hey, the Graphene OS phones are cool and all, but mainly interested in this Linux thing. Okay, we'll still touch on Graphene OS, learn something about it, but we won't spend as much time. We'll lean heavier on the things that you're interested in. And then ways to contact us. I'm adding slowly but surely, getting some communication stuff. So the Commo tab has got some radio, so Meshtastic. There's Mesh Core, another one out now. There's a bunch of Mesh is just a fascinating concept. So the ad hoc mobile, whatever Mesh setups is what the military is going towards. And it's just a really good way of doing communication that a centralized authority like a government or a big tech company cannot shut it down. This is kind of how the Tor network works. The Tor browser is a bunch of decentralized nodes, like about 7,000 or so, probably more than that now. So you're hopping across multiple nodes, which is what gives it the Tor, the onion router. It's like layers of an onion. Each one's encrypted, and the one previous doesn't know the one before. So it masks your true IP address, where you're coming from. But that's the decentralized network. So there's no government agency that can just flip a switch and shut Tor off. You would have to go shut off every single Tor node around the world, and then while they're shutting them off, you can spin up new ones over like in minutes. So it's like whack-a-mole that you'd never be able to actually shut down Tor as long as people keep putting up fresh nodes. So if you're Google, for example, they did this a number of times, but they've actually turned off the internet effectively because like 96% of people use Google as their search engine. So what they didn't actually shut off the internet per se, but they did effectively. So again, that DNS, that domain naming system, they actually just flipped the switch. Again, one entity with effectively one mouse click was able to flip a switch, shut off DNS, which means you couldn't visit a website. So if you wanted to go to graphenegoat.com, you would type it in, and the DNS was turned off, so it could not translate to that IP address. So unless you knew the actual IP address for every site you wanted to visit, you effectively had no internet. And they did this on like a Saturday morning when all the markets around the world were already closed. So it had minimal disruption, but for like 45 minutes as a test, I guess, they shut off the internet. So these decentralized systems, whether that's communication with things like, Meshtastic is not really, it's awesome project. It's more, I love the concept. It's not all that practical because it's limited to text messages, basically, and location sharing. So, but we talk about ATAC. So if you want to learn about ATAC, is a real popular one. Is integrates your mapping software as well as messaging back and forth. And a lot of there's a lot of integrations with it as well. So you can integrate it with different radio systems. So you can do your communication with voice. You can do video in some cases, depending on the device. You can do voice messages, text messages, pictures. You can share different map layers. So if you're having like tactical stuff or search and rescue operations, anything that requires a lot of moving pieces, stuff like ATAC is really good. Again, another decentralized tool that we can use. So anytime I can push towards decentralization away from central control, I'm all for that. Anytime I can go from closed source black box ecosystem to the open source, the free, especially the free, that's the other beauty, the free and open source world, that's the direction I want to go. Same thing with the cell phones. I want to shift the paradigm. Don't go to Verizon or to Apple. Buy a device with cash or money order or a privacy.com card from someone like me or Mark 37. There's a bunch. There's Above Phone is another one that's out there. There's a lot of folks now that are selling them, but they're really easy to do yourself. So shift the paradigm away from that big tech ecosystem by your own device that you own, you control. Now you have an operating system on it that you 100% control. And then stuff like private investigators, again, back to like companies and employees feeding all kinds of sensitive data into Chat GPT to get work done. That's just not cool. So have a lot of my thing is, we do the training and try to keep you as safe as possible online from a privacy and security standpoint, but to also arm you with the tools, both the physical devices, but in most cases, it's arming you with the tools, software-wise, to keep you safe. Your custom DNS, using VPN, doing some hardening, like the computers I sell, for example. Yes, they're Linux, they're already secure, but I just go through. I have scripts that I wrote with AI that go through and automatically download like 40 different applications. That one I actually didn't create with AI. That one I made one just from my own skill, just a bash script. It installs about 4 dozen applications that I like to have on my system. So anytime I get a new instance, whether it's a virtual machine or a physical laptop, desktop, I want PDF editing tools. I want image editing tools, video. I want different utilities for just checking status of my system, like task manager type stuff. But to go through and install all of those would take like 4 hours. So I wrote a script that does it in about 45 minutes while I'm doing something else. It's just doing it automatically. So you get a computer.
That was your own little kit bashing on Python, or what'd you do?
Yeah, it's just bash scripting. Yeah, most of the stuff I do is Python or Bash. So Bash, I know well. That's the one I actually can do without AI pretty well, but I still use AI 99% of the time. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of automate stuff. But it's a great way to, so when I sell computers to folks, not only is it already a nice hardened Linux system, I go through and just do the little tweaks like disable IPv6, which is like the long 128-bit address versus a little IP address that you normally see, the IPv4, where it's like 4 octets of numbers, like 192.168.something. So I disable IPv6, enable the firewall, tune the firewall, because you can disable certain ports. Lockdown, like SSH, for example, is secure shell. It's a way to basically log into the back end of a computer. So you can disable things like that. Just do some, install the VPN, install custom DNS, get the login, everything prepped. So when you get a computer, you've got the password to the full disk encryption, the user password, you've got the login information for your next DNS account, and then you just plug in your own credentials for Proton or Molvad, IVPN, whichever VPN you choose. They're all loaded up on there, so you can just enter your stuff, sign in, and you already have a playground. Not only is it hardened, but you've got about 4 dozen extra tools already installed on the machine, and all of that, the operating system and all those tools that I install, it's something like, after it's expanded and fully configured, it only takes up, I think it's like 38 gigabytes, which is nothing for an operating system and all those tools. So yeah, you got lean, mean. That's the other thing with Linux, just like with Graphene OS, because it's not doing all this telemetry. It's very lightweight. It's very fast. So Windows and Apple has bazillions of things that it's doing. It's screenshots. It's running AI. All of them have AI on board in addition to cloud connected, but it's running AI locally on your files that are going to the cloud. It's running more powerful AI from the cloud. So Linux is not doing any of that. There is no Microsoft. There is no Apple or Google. It's just you and a computer that you control completely. There is no other entity there.
It's like the 80s all over again, huh?
Yeah, so nice. Say, if I could go back, like about 2004, if I could just like go back to 2004 and rip the knob off, just right there, it was about good. We had some internet. You had LimeWire, so you could download all the music and viruses, but it wasn't all that crazy. It's all like bulletin board systems, and dark web is a thing still.
Yeah, SciStop on a bulletin board down in all places, Louisiana, on a 300. Then it got an 800 baud. Ooh, so I'm really old. Hey, Goat had a question. He says ATAC. He was wondering how secure ATAC is in your opinion.
That's a tough one because I don't know currently. So I do know that years when the military first tested this thing, the thing came out. Oh my God, this thing is wonderful. I'm aware of Army doing it was supposed to be like a 2 to 3 week test. They were going to go out and actually field test this thing. So while they were doing that, they brought in like NSA and some other super spooks to try to break it and break into it and monitor it and see how they could attack it. And it failed miserably. By day 3, they're like, it's done. We're not using this. Incredibly insecure. Now, that was then. I'm not saying it's perfect now, but I do know it is a lot better now. Would I use it for something that I trust my life on it? No. So that's what I would. That's just my opinion. I don't know for a fact, but I think it's pretty good. But I don't think it's good enough to where it's not like Proton Mail or Signal or some of those type of tools where it's open source, fully encrypted, zero knowledge encryption. I trust that because again, all I have to do is trust math because I can see the source code. With ATAC, I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that it is a lot better than it used to be. So if that's any comfort, would I use it for most things? Yes. Again, just for the most sensitive things, I would think long and hard about it and see if there was another alternative that would work good enough that I could rely on 100%.
So if you're doing like search and rescue, it works for a grid, merging all those people out there. If you're doing low 100%. Threat surveillance on a guy and you're trying to coordinate all your teams, that's good. But if it's a high threat, that's a Russian mafia guy. No, let's get something else in here.
And you got to look at your adversary too. Like, who are you trying to prevent from seeing that information? Is it a nation state? Then I would definitely not trust it. But if you're going after some enemy that's maybe not, but even some of the people that you would think don't necessarily have a lot of sophistication, especially now in the age of AI, you kind of have to assume that your adversary could be savvy enough with the augmentation of AI to try to break into your stuff. But it is difficult as someone that does the studying for red teaming to break into stuff and someone that is doing the signals intelligence research, effectively, I guess is what I would call it, where I'm trying to not only collect for exploitation, but figure out how I can break it and therefore how I can patch what I have to defend against it, right? So ATAC's not quite there in my book for the top level stuff, but I would trust it up to that point if that helps guide people. Again, that's just my personal opinion from using it, looking at it, and knowing a little bit of the history going back. It definitely was very insecure at one time, but I think it is much, much better now. Just don't have that 100% warm and fuzzy, like 95%.
Perfect. All right. So we'll leave it a couple minutes here, see if there's any more questions coming in. And then, man, I could sit here and talk all day, but unfortunately, I think we're about to run up against a hard hour here, or 3 hours. We're up 3 hours here. So
I could talk forever. Of course, awesome. It's this for 3 days straight with lots of questions and stuff. So you can get to the course, definitely. But again, I don't post a lot. So just invite me out and force, 6, 10, however many friends you can gather. And their families. We have a lot of times have couples or whole families will come take it. So just give me a shit. And the email is all over the website. So you're all, and if you don't have a course, you're welcome to reach out and just ask questions. If you're like, hey, what's up with ATAC? Can you point me in the right direction on how much should I trust something like ATAC? Hey, let's dig into that some more. If I don't know, let's dig into that and find out and point you to the right direction. In some cases, I might know someone that knows better to answer questions better, but yeah, there's a lot of it's this world. It's hard to keep up. We think of like, oh, someone's an IT person or a computer guy. It doesn't really mean a whole lot these days because it's so specialized. There's not really anyone that can absorb and understand the full scope of what IT is today. So you have a lot of people that do. Matter of fact, one of the network assessments and hardening I was just doing for a lady, she worked in IT, like very tech savvy person, but had no concept of privacy, a little bit of security, but wasn't practicing it. There's a lot of people in the security world that don't practice privacy and security. They're using all the big tech junk. They're using the same password. They're not using 2FA. So even people that do this for a living are not shoring up their digital security. So yeah, it's hard to keep up with everything. But as far as the basics are the basics in almost any discipline, whether that's shooting, medicine, whatever that is, if you can master the basics, that's kind of what we cover. It's not just the basics. We go into a lot of advanced areas as well. But if you can at least be aware of the fundamentals, again, there's a lot of little short trail, easy things that we can do to lock down our devices and our networks to stay safe. So the other stuff, if you're interested in going deeper on any one thing, it's a huge time investment. It just takes forever to really stay up on all this stuff. So it's a challenge, but it's fun. It's a good one.
Well, you're definitely doing a hell of a job staying on top of it. Like I said, I don't know when you sleep because you're always, doing something. We're getting messages at 2 a.m. and stuff like, hey, check this out. What the? That's awesome. It's super for the community, like the PI community, the outside the PI community as well. You're doing a great job. So we really do appreciate that. And again, I'm sorry, the things are shutting down now. It's already about 3 hours here. So the
That's-
lower monitors just shut
Plenty
off
long
on me.
enough. I'm sure folks are like,
Like,
okay,
we're done. It's getting dark. I'm like, it's just, I don't own my setup anymore. I don't know. It just tells me what to do here. All right.
And I do love the long, like the Joe Rogan type, the long, like Sean Ryan, that does like a 7-hour. I love that stuff.
Oh,
but
man.
I realize not
That was
everyone
awesome.
does.
Yeah, but they've got like leather seats and, they have a budget. I just, like I said, I'm duct taping a Sony A6000 10-year-old camera up here. It's about it. So you saw the one in the cabin, right? I have my phone. I'm like, okay, this will be the separate.
see
Let's do this.
Yeah, my awesome laptop webcam is not exactly all that great. But
I used to be cool, not anymore. But anyway, but before we go out, we'll go out on a happy note. If you're able to, within classification, what was the funniest or the most memorable case that you had to work? What's the one that stands out in your mind since you've been a PI here in Washington State?
Anything related to digital or just in general?
Anything.
Well, probably one of the more revealing ones. We do a lot of executive protection, and so a lot of high net worth individuals. So in this area, it's Microsoft, it's Amazon, even Facebook, and even some of the Google's. They got a big one down in, I think, Portland area. But I was driving around someone whose name rhymes with Reid Hoffman, but listening to conversations of people like that in the back of the car while I'm driving. And that's about all I can say is from who and what and when. But suffice to say, they were saying things that confirmed a lot of what I would guess as far as how powerful companies like Microsoft are versus our own government. If you look at the definition of fascism, it's the merger of state and corporate power, where basically the state can do things through the corporate entity, right? Is that for me right now, where does Facebook or Google or Amazon, where do they end and where does the government begin? They're all interlaced. They're, bosom buddies. So I'm not saying we're in an outright fascist state. That's, a bit ridiculous right now, but it's not that ridiculous to see where that's going to lead. But hearing that type of conversation was definitely one of the more impactful, as far as him saying it basically like, hey, you're worried about government crackdown regulation or them not coming around. It was like laughing in their face about how much control companies like Microsoft and others have over the government. There's been some good ones though, like Coinbase. I know a guy that's does a lot of EP work, or at least did at one point. EP work for the Coinbase CEO seemed pretty based, and but even like those Zuckerberg types, I mean, they're getting into jujitsu and shooting guns, archery. They can building bunkers and doomsday survival bunkers and stuff. So a lot of the rich folks are preparing that type of stuff. But there's been a lot of interesting ones. The cool thing I like about it is in this job is the complete diversity of missions and jobs. It's going to be wearing a suit and tie, driving a billionaire around for security, and then you're doing surveillance, peeing in a jug for 12 hours overnight, watching
the glamour.
Yeah, so and everything in between, like BLM riots and protests in 2020. I was right in the thick of it, doing security and basically escorting the media companies like CNN and all the, like I'll take your money, come on, keep them safe, and it's keeping people safe. And it's like, oh, happily take all the money as long as I'm not selling myself out to make them benefit. I don't want to give them money. So it's kind of funny. We're a rail on some of these companies, and you end up either directly or indirectly working for them in the security realm. All these companies depend on people like us with our, tendencies and beliefs. So it's, the whole world underneath them can crumble pretty fast, despite all the power they have. You can build the most secure facility, but if you don't have people to staff it, then how secure are you? But I don't know. That was, seeing some of the big caliber people here that you get to kind of be a fly on the wall, so to speak, confirms a lot of the stuff. So maybe that wasn't a happy ending, but
I was waiting for the punchline. That's just like a gut punch.
If anything, it convinces us.
It was a good transition. Yeah, so it was a good transition because those that are on this page, we got a lot of new folks here. But if you go back over the history of the oligarchs, part 1, you can actually see this is nothing new. There was a guy, Oliver Nelson Cromwell, who ran Cromwell and Sullivan law firm and literally created the nation of Panama to get profit for his clients, literally, and used the United States government to facilitate that, right? The United States government moved where it wanted to build a canal in Nicaragua where it would be easy, down to Panama, which was a death trap. And literally by the skin of our teeth, we didn't have the casualties that the French had because we had a really good doctor in there that figured out mosquitoes carry malaria and yellow fever. But literally that was a lawyer. That was one guy with some powerful clients manipulating and shaping. And we're talking the time frame is 1903 to 1905, right? So that's kind of been baked in from the beginning. And then he had two people in his law firm named Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles, right? Who became CIA later on, 40 years later, CIA director and State Department, Secretary of State. So, it's just the organizational structure dictates outcome. And sometimes it's not necessarily what they intend to do. It's that organizational structure that's just going to drive that outcome, no matter your best intentions. Right. So that's for people watching this, for the history of that, go back over, oligarchs part 1, part 2 is Rockefeller and that massive network. And 3 is kind of like some of the oligarch groups that actually benefit from war, right? They made money on it.
Like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. You look at the whole country went to shit in 1913, the Federal Reserve. I have a picture of the, I didn't recognize it immediately. Got a gift from my wife a couple years ago. There's a picture of like a building on fire. And I'm like, what is this? Oh, and so there's a guy that he paints picture. He literally sits in front of the Federal Reserve and paints the buildings on fire and people are running away. And it's like, so that's a picture that's over one of the pictures in my little chaos office desk area. So I love it.
So the organizational structure. Yeah. And then now the thing is, okay, so the organizational structure is going to go through a massive change because of AI, right? AI is massively going to change the organizational structure as it has existed for, the last 500, 400 years, right? It's been roughly the same structure. There was a little bit of an increase when you had telegraphs, right? Telephones were just telegraphs, that speed of transmission, but now you have essentially, different thought process.
Well, the bandwidth of logic and decision-making and capability to, intelligence, whatever it's artificial or human. Us as humans, we only have a finite amount of bandwidth. We have to sleep for 8 hours a day. So 16 hours is all you have. And in there, you have to eat and do other things and work. So how much bandwidth does a human being how much are they able to contribute in any given day, or week, or year, versus now you have a force multiplier or something AI that has the power of millions of people potentially in the hands of one individual. What I would give a lot to just have like a day alone with whatever DARPA has for their AI, because I bet it's really freaking good.
Next level,
probably would terrify us to death if we learn what they were playing with. I would love to see that. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for coming out. But definitely appreciate it. Everybody go over to Graphene Goat for you see his little website there, graphenegoat.com. If you can, go to his in-person course. If you can't, there's got the online course in there. He's got a Rumble channel, tons of this great stuff on there. He's got all the links right in there. Actually, he's an evangelist for making you an independent person where you use technology as a tool. Technology doesn't use you as its tool. And that's the bottom line of what he's enabling you to become a free human being again, which is so important. Like I said, there's people making tons of money off it. You're not making any of the money off it. You're paying for them to get rich off of your data, right? So
open the source code, trusted God, all others pay cash.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Now I will see you down in Florida, I guess, if we don't see you before that. You're going to Mount Baker, so you'll be in our neck of the woods up there for a little bit
next week. Yeah.
Get that protective tan. I'm trying to get a protective tan. It's not working, but before I go to Florida, I got to get that. So otherwise, I'll be a lobster.
Casey white guy. Yeah.
Take care. We'll see you. Thanks again.
All right. Out here. Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right. So there's that. If you have any questions, feel free to put them here. We'll forward them to Aaron, or you can go ahead and go on his website. He's really good with communicating. Like I said, he wants to get that knowledge base out there. And if you have any questions on that, feel free here. Again, as always, if you have any questions or any topics you want us to cover, we'll go ahead and do this. This actually came from a couple of questions that people had earlier that sent me a private message. And I'm like, oh, I know a guy, right? It's a good thing about PI. I know a guy, and Aaron is that guy. As you can see, full of information on that. One thing I did want to say, now I was going to put a contest out there, but there's one thing I'll just give you the information on. Again, nothing new under the sun, the history of kind of electronic Trojan horses. There's a question earlier about the chips that are in your phones, pinging out independent of the software, right? The chip itself is doing that. If you remember up here at actually Washington State, it's history, it's public knowledge now, it's no longer classified. there was the USS Pueblo, and it was Sandpoint Naval Station just outside of Seattle. And if everybody remembers the Pueblo, that's the one that's still on display in North Korea, right? They'll still do tours of that. They captured an American ship. It's basically a surveillance ship, a radio ship. But what they did was on this one, they actually sailed it close to the danger zone where they couldn't be protected anymore. And the crew, according to, depending on which version of the reports you read, the crew didn't know, but the captain knew, or the executive officer knew and the captain didn't know. Who knows? But it got captured and it was transported, and then the Chinese kind of used it. But it was a Trojan horse. So within this, the 1960s versions of computers, the large vacuum tubes and some transistors, but that old system actually had a certain ping. So when it was hooked up to another system, land-based system that was used to evaluate it, it was then able to send out and monitor from that. So if you have a chance, look up the case study of the USS Pueblo as an electronic Trojan horse. So it was a piece of equipment that just gets captured, but it's designed then in its hardware to be able to go into systems and then move that information back. And it was very successful, according to one author. It's not an official report, but it's an author who read the official reports that are declassified and looked at it. It may have contributed significantly to the ability of Kissinger to get Richard Nixon to China to negotiate a further separation at the time of the Soviet Union and China, so that then the United States could kind of get those two spread out and then work deals into that, getting Nixon China. Now whether that's true or not, who knows? They've become friends now with the SCO, but that's a possibility. The other one is, if you remember back in 1999, 2000, I think it was the E8 or it was a P8. I think it was a P8 Orion. Anyway, it was the Navy electronic ship that was forced down over Hainan Island, right? So it actually, the crew landed it on Hainan Island because they surrendered to the CCP who was coming in there. Was that a similar situation because they didn't fight too hard? Question is, could they have? It may be honestly what it is, but just recognize, even if you leave some piece of tech behind and somebody grabs it, that may be a Trojan horse. That's been used throughout history. We do have incidents of electronic Trojan horses. So would it be easy to put something like that in a cell phone? Absolutely. But would they spend the time and expense to do it? Who knows? But there's the history. So technically we could say this is historical detective agency. So there's your history. USS Pueblo, using electronic Trojan horses, even as far back as 1968, I believe, 68 or 72. All right. Any other further questions? We'll go ahead and sign out for now. Thank you very much for hanging in there for 3 hours on that thing. But Aaron's a great guest. And again, if you have any questions, graphenegoat.com, go ahead and hit it. Really good for getting the tech out there, both the security, the safety, and being able to get your privacy back. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Be safe.